Chapter 50. After the fight with Qiao Feng in the virtuous gathering manner, Feng Qingshan invited him to have a drink. Although they did not become sworn brothers like Duan Yu, the two of them appreciated each other's talents. As for the other people from the virtuous gathering manner, Shui Muhua's counterattack, in addition to Qiao Feng's peerless skill that could suppress the world, had already caused those who were not of the same mind to shrink back. Thus, this hero's assembly had a strong start but a weak finish, leaving it unsettled. Feng Qingshan and his party rested for a while and then returned to Beating Drum Mountain without stopping. At this moment, the entire Beating Drum Mountain was under martial law. 36 caves, 72 islands, and many experts from Class 1 Hall surrounded the place so tightly that not even a fly could get in. After Wu Xingyun obtained the solitary sun finger from Dali, she relied on her rich inner energy, her experience in martial arts, and her innate talent for comprehension. 3 days after everyone returned to Beating Drum Mountain, she managed to cultivate the solitary sun finger to the 1st grade. As for the offerings used to replenish Wu Yazi's qi, aside from Jiumaji, Ding Xuanxiu, the 4 great villains, and the evil fighters from the 36 caves, 72 islands, and Class 1 Hall, there were around 60 to 70 of them, aside from the offerings Feng Qingshan brought back. As for the 1,000-year ice silkworm, it was also caught by Li Qiushui because of the divine Wood King Cauldron. All kinds of natural treasures such as Ganoderma, ginseng, Polygonum multiflorum, Taisui fungus, caterpillar fungus, and so on were also transported from Vulture Palace and Xixia. Originally, Wu Xingyun and Li Qiushui wanted to bring Wu Yazi to Vulture Palace or the Xixia Royal Palace to heal his injuries so that no one would disturb him during the healing process. However, Wu Yazi was in his twilight years and did not have much time left to live. If they moved around recklessly, they might die before they reached their destination. Wu Xingyun naturally wanted Wu Yazi to go to the Vulture Palace, while Li Qiushui wanted Wu Yazi to go to the Imperial Palace of the Western Xia country. Since neither of them could convince the other, they finally settled on the Beating Drum Mountain. In any case, although they had wantonly beaten down the people of the Jianghu, because these people were evil people, they did not attract too much attention. In addition, the matter of Qiao Feng and Murong Fu had attracted the attention of most people, so their actions did not attract any suspicion, and they did not have to worry about being attacked by a group of people. Before they started, Wu Xingyun, Li Qiushui, Feng Qingshan, and Shui Muhua had a discussion. After all, Feng Qingshan wasn't sure if this method would work. They could only try their best to prevent accidents. Forget it, I'm already so old. I'll do my best and leave the rest to fate, Wu Yazi advised when he saw how serious Feng Qingshan and the others were. At this age, Wu Yazi, do you think I'm too old? Wu Xingyun's face immediately turned serious when he heard Wu Yazi's words, and he said unhappily, "Yes, senior brother. Are you going to abandon your wife and live a carefree life again?" Li Qiushui added softly. At the same time, she stabbed Wu Xingyun with a needle. After all, they were once husband and wife. All right. Martial uncle, martial aunt, the most important thing now is to treat master's injuries. This is not a foolproof plan. If something goes wrong because of you, it will be too late for regrets. Seeing that Wu Xingyun and Li Qiushui were about to fall out again, Feng Qingshan had no choice but to speak up to stop them. Wu Xingyun and Li Qiushui snorted coldly and said no more. Wu Yazi, Feng Qingshan, and the others looked at each other and couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. After everything was prepared, Feng Qingshan, Wu Xingyun, and Wu Yazi entered the wooden house. As for Su Xinghe, Li Qiushui, and the others, they sat outside the wooden house with their legs crossed, feeling uneasy. Although it wasn't necessary, it was still a precaution. "Junior brother, I'm going to start." Wu Xingyun sat behind Wu Yazi and said softly, Sorry for troubling senior sister." Wu Yazi sighed. In this life, the person he owed the most was Wu Xingyun from the macro world. He gave his heart to little junior sister and his body to Li Qiushui. Great senior sister was deeply in love with him, but he couldn't repay her in any way. "All right, it's worth it even if I die for you. Furthermore, I still want to wait for you to recover and find out from your mouth who your true love is between me and that bitch." Wu Xingyin interrupted Wu Yazi and didn't give him a chance to refute. "Concentrate and guard your dantian. I'm going to start." As soon as he finished speaking, Wu Xingyun's eyelids closed. Without thinking, he suddenly opened his eyes. There was a flash of light in his eyes, like the first ray of light that pierced through the dark night. "Huh?" Wu Xingyun's voice was even deeper than Wu Yazi's. His pure inner force surged up like a wave. At first, it was only the spring tide that connected the sea and the glittering waves for thousands of miles. Then, it turned into a blue tide and a white wolf that covered the sky. A suffocating pressure swept out. The birds in the valley seemed to have encountered a great danger and flew away at the same time. "It's starting," Su Xinghe and the others thought to themselves when they felt Wu Xingyun's pressure. Li Qiushui was the only one who couldn't stand Wu Xingyun's pressure, even though she was worried about Wu Yazi. However, she also knew that this wasn't the right time, so she merely scoffed. Back in the wooden house, Wu Xingyun activated the World Desolation and Supremacy technique and displayed the Grade 1 Yang finger. Her hands were as fast as lightning. In an instant, she struck Wu Yazi's acupuncture points repeatedly like a 1,000-armed guanyin. Waves of pure, yang qi and vitality flowed from her fingers into Wu Yazi's body. The Grade 1 Yang finger had the effect of bringing the dead back to life. When Huang Rong was seriously injured by the iron palm, Reverend Yiding used the Grade 1 Yang finger to pull her back from the brink of death. Compared to Reverend Yiding in the future, Wu Xingyun's inner force, knowledge, and attainment of the Grade 1 Yang finger were all superior. Now that she was using it, the effect was naturally great. Wu Yazi, who was originally like a dead tree, began to sprout like an old tree under the effect of Wu Xingyun's Grade 1 Yang finger. The sun was setting in the west, and the aura of decay gradually dissipated. A sense of nirvana and rebirth gradually filled the air. However, this situation was short-lived, like the last radiance of the setting sun. After all, it was rare for a person to live past 70. Wu Yazi was already around 90. He was not seriously injured, so it was fine if he had inner force. However, he had been injured for 30 years, and his inner force had dissipated in a day. His body was already riddled with holes. The only reason he could still give out vitality was because of the yang qi of the Grade 1 Yang finger that Wu Xingyun had given him. Although this energy could heal wounds, it couldn't prolong his life. Therefore, even if Wu Yazi's injuries were healed, if he couldn't improve his inner force, the most he could do was delay the time of his death. Chapter 51. At this moment, the various treasures that he had prepared beforehand came in handy. Fang Qingshan stretched out his hand, like Xiao Feng's dragon catcher hand. Actually, he was relying on the devouring power of the Dark North divine skill to grab the various elixirs that he had prepared beforehand. "Open your mouth!" Fang Qingshan shouted and flicked his finger. The elixirs entered Wu Yazi's body in a single file. Wu Yazi's body couldn't have been treated in this way. Otherwise, the elixirs would have turned into poison. However, a serious illness needed strong medicine. After careful consideration by Wu Xingyun, Li Qiushui, and Xuan Muhua, they felt that Wu Yazi couldn't be treated with strong medicine in this state. Of course, they weren't acting without reason. After all, they still had Wu Xingyun's first solar finger to prolong his life. Wu Yazi wasn't doing nothing either. At this moment, a mental cultivation method began to circulate in his body. It wasn't the Dark North divine skill, the supremacy of the 8 desolations, or the minor phaseless skill. It was the foundation of the carefree sect, the everlasting eternal spring technique. This was the foundation of the carefree sect. Whether it was the Dark North divine skill, the supremacy of the 8 desolations, or even the minor phaseless skill, they were all derived from the everlasting eternal spring technique. If you said that this cultivation method was really better than the 3 martial arts of the Dark North divine skill, it was not necessarily so, but this cultivation method also had its own uniqueness. As the name suggested, it was immortal. Although it was impossible to really reach this point, in terms of maintenance and prolonging life, it was a notch higher than the Dark North Divine skill, and when used at this time, it complemented each other. As time passed, Fong Qingshan and the other two in the wooden hut didn't feel anything. After all, they were focused on their own things and didn't dare to slack off. Li Qiushui and Su Xinghe, who were outside the wooden hut, looked anxious. Waiting was the most unbearable thing. As the effects of the Wu Xingyun's solitary solar finger gradually expanded, Wu Yizi's withering meridians and bones started to relax bit by bit. With the help of the elixirs that Fong Qingshan fed him from time to time and the circulation of the everlasting eternal spring technique, Wu Yizi's body emitted a series of explosive sounds from time to time. One side waxed and the other grew. As Wu Yizi's aura became more and more stable, his bones were cracking, and his qi and blood were like mercury. Apart from the lack of inner force, he was no different from the Wu Yizi that Fong Qingshan had met for the first time. What about Wu Xingyin? As her inner force transformed into the solitary yang finger and poured into Wu Yizi's body, her face turned pale, and she started sweating profusely. Following that, her aura became weaker and weaker. It was as if she had switched places with Wu Yizi. Although Fong Qingshan didn't put in as much effort as the two of them, he didn't have it easy either. He was in charge of feeding her the elixirs. Not only did he have to be on time, but he also had to be careful. He couldn't feed her all in one go, and he couldn't feed her too little either. If there was no more, he had to add more. Wu Xingyin needed it too. After all, this was different from the past. In the past, even though one's cultivation would be gone, most of the power would still be hidden in the acupoints, except for a small amount that would dissipate into the air. This time, it was like throwing a meat bun at a dog. Fortunately, she had all sorts of elixirs to nourish her. She only needed to spend a little more time cultivating again. The sun set, the moon rose, and the moon rose. After a long period of work, Fong Qingshan couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when he saw that Wu Xingyun and Wu Yizi's auras had completely calmed down. At a certain moment, Wu Yizi spat out a mouthful of turbid air. It was like the breath of a divine dragon. It was 7 feet away from his body, and it lasted for a long time. Then he slowly opened his eyes. It was like a ray of light that pierced through the dark night. A hint of joy flashed across Fong Qingshan's tired face. Just as he was about to step forward and speak, Wu Yizi turned around and asked Wu Xingyin softly, "Senior sister, are you all right?" Power was a person's confidence. Although Wu Xingyin was overbearing, she was a woman after all. After hearing that her power was gone, she couldn't help but feel a little short of breath. Looking at Wu Yizi, who had recovered, Wu Xingyin stretched out her hands to hold her cheeks. She revealed a hint of joy and shook her head. "I'm fine. It's worth it even if I die now for you." "Senior sister, you sigh." Wu Yizi felt even more guilty when he heard this. Fong Qingshan couldn't help but shake his head when he saw this. Wu Yizi seemed to have recovered, but he was still one step away. Fong Qingshan had no choice but to step forward and interrupt. "Master, Uncle Master needs to rest now. You're one step away too. I'll ask Uncle Master to bring Ding Chunxiu and the others in. There will be plenty of time in the future," Fong Qingshan added. Only then did Wu Yizi and Wu Xingyun nod. Fong Qingshan carried Wu Xingyun and pushed open the door of the wooden house. Before he could say anything, Li Qiushui went in without a word. Seeing this, Wu Xingyun was very dissatisfied. She snorted and was about to speak. "Junior brother, how is Master?" Fortunately, Su Xinghe spoke at this moment. "There's still one last step left," Fong Qingshan said with a tired smile. "Senior brother, you can suppress Ding Chunxiu and the others. After Master devours them and the ice silkworm, he will be able to recover to his original state." "Really? That's great." Su Xinghe was overjoyed. Without another word, he turned and brought the 8 friends of the Hanga Valley to bring Ding Chunxiu and the others over. At this moment, the Vulture Palace disciples in the distance also noticed the situation. Seeing Wu Xingyin being carried out by Fong Qingshan, they immediately turned pale and ran over. "Supremacy, Granny, what's wrong?" The 3 women were a drama. A group of women chattered incessantly. They were more noisy than sparrows. All right, Granny won't die yet. Even Wu Xingyun was annoyed and scolded. Granny Yu and the others quietened down. Granny has lost her cultivation and needs to recuperate. Take good care of her. Tell me if you need anything. Fang Qingshan brought Wu Xingyun and the people of Vulture Palace to a newly built bamboo house and said to them, "Young master, don't worry. We will." Granny Yu and the others nodded in agreement. What young master? From today onwards, that little brat Fang is the new High Lord of our Spirit Vulture Palace. Aren't you guys going to pay your respects? At that moment, Wu Xingyun suddenly spoke up, catching Fang Qingshan and the others off guard. What? Seeing that Granny doesn't know martial arts, you don't listen to me anymore? Wu Xingyun was temperamental, especially now that he was especially sensitive. Seeing Granny Yu and the others' stunned expressions, he immediately flew into a rage. We wouldn't dare. Greetings, supremacy. Only then did Granny Yu and the others react. Not daring to disobey Wu Xingyun, they hurriedly bowed to Fang Qingshan. Eldest uncle, this... Fang Qingshan looked at the group of women bowing to him and could not help but smile bitterly at Wu Xingyun. Chapter 52. Fang Qingshan did not reject becoming the lord of the Vulture Palace at all. After all, when he planned to conquer Mount Beating Drum, in addition to Wu Yazi's internal force, there was also the leader of the Carefree sect. Although the Carefree sect was not famous and could not be compared with the Zen sect of Shaolin Temple, it could not be compared with the Tantric sect, which was almost the sole power in the Western region. But the power of the Carefree sect could not be underestimated at all. In the Western region, the Vulture Palace of Tianshan controlled 36 caves and 72 islands. It was the only force that could compete with the Tantric sect. The first class hall of Xixia was established by Li Qiushui. As the old princess, she did not dare to say that she controlled the power of the whole country, but her power was even greater than that of Wu Xingyun. After all, she was backed by a country. Fang Qingshan wanted to become the leader of the Carefree sect because he wanted to inherit these forces of the Carefree sect. It was not that he had a strong desire for power, but that these forces could bring him luck. For him, he did not even care about the power of the immortal world, let alone the power of the low martial arts world. As long as there was luck, as long as there was a continuous development of the world, these things were easy to get. He originally thought that after Wu Yazi passed the leader of the Carefree sect to him, he would plan the power of Tianshan and Xixia. But he did not know what was wrong with Wu Xingyun. He actually passed the position of the Lord to him at this moment. For a moment, he did not know whether to accept it or not. Well, I'm tired. You can go out. Fang Qingshan was still a little hesitant, but Wu Xingyun directly drove them out. In this regard, Fang Qingshan, Granny Yu, and the others who walked down the bamboo building could not help but look at each other. Lord, what do you think we should do next? After all, the people of the Vulture Palace obeyed Wu Xingyun's words. They came back to their senses and asked the new lord. As he inherited the position of Spirit Vulture Palace's supreme lord, he heard the chime of a bell from his Naiwan palace and another chess piece began to glow. Fang Qingshan's face lit up with joy and he took a deep breath, saying, "Everything will continue as before." At this moment, a white figure floated past. If it wasn't for the fact that it was broad daylight, one would have thought that it was a ghost. "Senior sister, are you all right? Junior sister has come to see you." "Thank you, senior sister, for risking your life to save senior brother, giving us a chance to continue our relationship." The person who came was Li Qiushui. She didn't go in, but stood outside the door and spoke with deep affection. Her voice was soft and gentle, and if one didn't know better, they would really think that they had a deep sisterly relationship. "Who is it?" Granny Yu and the others naturally didn't want Wu Xingyun to be disturbed while he was recuperating. Just as they were about to step forward, they didn't expect to see a field of pebbles falling like a fairy scattering flowers. Pa 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 pa. After the rain hit the banana trees, Granny Yu and the others immediately stood there like wooden statues. They didn't move at all and stared at each other with their eyes wide open. Li Qiushui had sealed their acupoints. "Martial uncle." Seeing this scene, How could Fang Qingshan not understand that these two people who had been fighting for half their lives had started fighting again after Wu Yazi was fine? Martial nephew, if master has something to do, I will do it for him. Why don't you go and look after your master? As for your martial uncle, don't worry. With martial uncle accompanying him, nothing will happen. Fang Qingshan had just opened his mouth when he was interrupted by Li Qiushui. Don't worry. It's precisely because of your presence that it's hard to predict what will happen. Hearing Li Qiushui's words, Fang Qingshan couldn't help but smile bitterly. Senior sister, you don't know, but my husband said that after he recovers from his injuries, he will bring me back to the immeasurable jade cave to have a look. Oh, yes. I remember that he used a whole piece of warm jade to carve a jade statue according to my appearance. It's really lifelike. If there's a chance, I will bring senior sister there to have a look. After going to the immeasurable mountain, we plan to go to Lake Tai and see our daughter, Aluo. We owe this child a lot. I heard that not only is she married, but she also has a daughter. We have 3 generations under the same roof. Li Qiushui didn't care about Fang Qingshan anymore. Standing outside the door, she seemed to be chatting with Wu Xingyun. Her tone was sometimes happy and sometimes shy, making Fang Qingshan's heart pound. He was afraid that Wu Xingyun would be agitated and rush out, or if she was in the midst of recovery, she would go berserk. If that's the case, then I really have to congratulate junior sister. Just as Fang Qingshan was feeling uneasy and Li Qiushui was talking and laughing, the result was very different from what they had imagined. Wu Xingyun's personality seemed to have changed. She actually didn't get angry. She just said lightly in her exhaustion, and then said to Fang Qingshan, Martial nephew, you are now the new supremacy of our Vulture Palace. Martial uncle is a little tired now, so please entertain Martial uncle on behalf of Martial uncle. Huh? Fang Qingshan was stunned for a moment. It was because of Wu Xingyun's abnormality and also because of her personality. She actually wanted him to do it. At this moment, Fang Qingshan couldn't help but come back to his senses. He kind of understood why Wu Xingyun would pass the Vulture Palace to him at this time. Firstly, she was the inheritor of Wu Yazi's legacy. Handing the Vulture Palace over to Fang Qingshan would give her more points with Wu Yazi. Secondly, she had already anticipated that Li Qiushui would come to harass her. Since Fang Qingshan had accepted the position of Vulture Palace's palace master, why couldn't he help her block Li Qiushui? What? You passed the Vulture Palace to him? Not only Fang Qingshan, Li Qiushui was also very surprised. She stared at the bamboo building in shock. Yes, the Vulture Palace will be passed down to the next generation sooner or later. But senior sister, I don't have any successor. It just so happens that Qingshan is the successor of junior brother. The future sect master of our carefree sect will not be a disgrace to the Vulture Palace. In fact, the carefree sect might even flourish in his hands. Wu Xingyun said unhurriedly. The people who understood you the most were not your friends, but your enemies. After fighting with Wu Xingyun for half their lives, who didn't know who the other was, Li Qiushui could see through Wu Xingyun's intentions at a glance. But he was using an overt scheme that was impossible to guard against. Seeing Fang Qingshan looking at her with a troubled expression, Li Qiushui also knew that she wouldn't be able to ridicule Wu Xingyun today. Hence, she changed her expression and returned to her gentle and sweet self. Seeing this, Fang Qingshan sighed. Indeed, life was like a play, and it all depended on one's acting skills. Li Qiushui looked at Fang Qingshan and said, Qingshan, thank you for saving your master this time. Master's wife doesn't have much to thank you with, so I've prepared a greeting gift for you. I hope you won't mind. As she spoke, Li Qiushui took out a jade talisman and handed it to Fang Qingshan. This is... Fang Qingshan looked at the item and asked curiously. This is the tiger talisman. Li Qiushui explained. With this item, you can completely mobilize the first-class hall of Xixia. With this item, your status in Xixia is equivalent to that of a first-class hall. Even if you see the emperor, you don't need to bow because you represent me. When necessary, you can even mobilize the Xixia army to serve you. Chapter 53. What? Happiness came so suddenly that Fang Qingshan could not help but be stunned. He had originally planned to inherit the position of the Carefree faction's leader from Wu Yazi, and then integrate the Vulture Palace and Western Xiao forces. He did not expect that Wu Xingyun and Li Qiushui would hand over the forces behind them to him before he could get the sect leader's ring from Wu Yazi. Take it. It's a little something from Uncle Master. Li Qiushui looked lovingly at Fang Qingshan and said, "We are all old. In the future, I will accompany your master to travel around and see the world. I don't have the mood to care about anything else. I can rest assured handing these to you." "Thank you, Uncle Master." There was no reason for Fang Qingshan to reject the opportunity to gain fate. Moreover, this was all part of his plan. After receiving the tiger tally, Fang Qingshan bowed to Li Qiushui. That's right." Li Qiushui glanced at the bamboo building and nodded satisfactorily. "Since senior sister wants to rest, let's go and see if your master is done." She did not wait for Wu Xingyun's reaction and pulled Fang Qingshan away. Wu Xingyun's cold snort came from the bamboo building. Li Qiushui's lips curled up, while Fang Qingshan smiled bitterly. Because of Wu Yazi, these two enemies could not fight. Of course, Wu Xingyun could not do anything even if he wanted to. Therefore, the two of them began to play tricks. Wu Xingyun wanted to make himself known to Wu Yazi and take the opportunity to block Li Qiushui. Therefore, he passed the position of Vulture Palace's supreme lord to Fang Qingshan. Although Li Qiushui did not know about it beforehand, she followed Wu Xingyun's words and passed the Western Xiao forces to Fang Qingshan. In this way, the two of them were even with Wu Yazi. Although Wu Xingyun had lost his cultivation for Wu Yazi, Li Qiushui had also contributed a lot. Moreover, she was his wife, so the two of them were evenly matched. I wonder what their expressions will be like when they find out that Wu Yazi doesn't like any of them, but Li Songhai. Looking at Li Qiushui, who was in a good mood, Fang Qingshan couldn't help but think. However, he felt that this idea would never come true in this lifetime. The reason Wu Yazi took out the painting and asked Su Zhu to find Wu Xingyun and Li Qiushui was because he was about to die. Since he was about to die, there was nothing he couldn't say. But today, not only would Wu Yazi not die, but he might even be able to rise from the ashes. He would have to face two women who loved him for their entire lives. They were willing to exchange their lives for his. At this moment, Wu Yazi, who owed them a lifetime, didn't want to tell them that he loved his junior sister. Even if he had to choose between the two of them, it would be a fatal blow to the other. He shook his head and threw these thoughts to the back of his mind. Because he couldn't bear it, he had already acted like a saint. He wouldn't try to resolve the love triangle for Wu Yazi again. When they arrived in front of Wu Yazi's wooden house, Fang Qingshan saw Su Xinghe happily dragging out the two evil men who had just had their inner force devoured. He couldn't help but ask, "Senior brother, how is master?" "Good, very good. I've never felt so good." Before Su Xinghe could open his mouth, a powerful voice rang out. Wu Yazi walked out of the wooden house. He had white hair and a youthful complexion. Li Qiushui couldn't see anyone else when she saw him. "Congratulations, master." "Congratulations, master." Fang Qingshan smiled. "This is all thanks to you. Otherwise, master would have died already," said Wu Yazi. "By the way, how is senior sister?" Fang Qingshan glanced at Li Qiushui, who was standing quietly behind Wu Yazi. When he saw that her expression didn't change, he couldn't help but sigh and reply, "Martial Anne is fine. She just needs to rest." That's good. That's good." Wu Yazi heaved a sigh of relief and said to Su Xinghe, "Send the rest of the spiritual herbs to your martial aunt, especially the ice silkworm." But Su Xinghe was obviously unwilling. Fang Qingshan noticed the strange look in Li Qiushui's eyes, but he didn't say anything. "All right, I've made up my mind," Wu Yazi said resolutely. "The inner force of these people is enough. The ice silkworm is not essential to me. Go. Your martial aunt has done so much for your master. It's just an ice silkworm. Your master will feel less guilty this way," said Li Qiushui. Wu Yazi couldn't help but nod in satisfaction. He looked at Li Qiushui with gentleness in his eyes. "Qingshan, I should have given this to you a long time ago. It's been delayed for so long." I'll give it to you now." After sending Su Xinghe away, Wu Yizi took off a ring from his thumb and handed it to Fang Qingshan. "This is the sect leader ring of my carefree sect. I'll give it to you." "Thank you, master." Fang Qingshan had accepted the Vulture Palace in the Western Xia country. Naturally, he wouldn't stand on ceremony with the sect leader ring. Wu Yizi was very satisfied with this. A disciple of the carefree sect should be free and easy. In the following days, Wu Yizi absorbed the inner force of a few people at a fixed time every day. Sometimes he would walk around with Li Qiushui, visit Wu Xingyun, or give pointers to Su Xinghe and Fang Qingshan. As for why he had to do it at a fixed time, it was because his body had just recovered. Even if Wu Xingyun tried his best to use the solitary solar finger to heal him, he wouldn't be able to recover immediately. After all, he was getting old and had been injured for so many years. Moreover, there was no construction without destruction. Wu Yizi had already felt the hope of breaking through. Naturally, he had to do it step by step. If he absorbed too much, he wouldn't be able to digest it in a short time. His foundation would be shaken, and the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. As for Fang Qingshan, he cultivated the 5th level of the Dragon-Elephant Prajna technique every day. Fang Qingshan showed this technique to Wu Yizi and the other two. The three of them, especially Wu Yizi, who was about to break through, couldn't help but be amazed by this technique. If it wasn't for the difficulty of cultivating it, even the 4 great inherited unique skills of the carefree sect would be inferior to it. Fortunately, the 3 of them had learned a lot from others. They were grandmasters who stood at the top of the pyramid in the world of martial arts. With their guidance, Fang Qingshan's speed of cultivating the 5th level was much faster. Based on his original calculations, he would have needed at least 2 years to successfully cultivate it. However, with Wu Yizi and the other two's guidance, the time was shortened by more than half. Fang Qingshan only spent half a year to cultivate the 5th level. Unfortunately, it was impossible for him to break through in a short time. Moreover, more than half a year had passed since he came to the Heavenly Dragon World. It was too late. Chapter 54. Fang Qingshan was the sect master of the free and unfettered faction. Yet he was cultivating the ultimate technique of another sect. If it were any other sect, it would have been considered disgraceful. However, Wu Yizi and the other two did not care about it at all. The free and unfettered sect was originally both righteous and evil, deviating from the orthodox path and somewhat running counter to the mainstream ideology. Moreover, it was just like how their teacher cultivated the everlasting eternal spring art, while they cultivated the red flower, white lotus root, and green lotus leaf, learning from the strong points of others, and choosing one of them to create the 3 ultimate skills of the Dark North Divine Art. If Fang Qingshan wanted to reach or even surpass them, he could not follow their old path step by step. Although the wisdom imbuement was powerful, the side effects were too great. Firstly, the foundation was unstable, and secondly, it was extremely difficult to break through the shackles. Back then, Wu Yizi had no choice. He did not want his martial arts to go to waste, but he also wanted someone to clean up the sect. Therefore, he passed down his martial arts. Now that his body had recovered and even improved, his thinking was different. Originally, he was still thinking about how to help Fang Qingshan eliminate the problem of his foundation. However, he had already turned his inner strength into elixir and switched to the dragon-elephant technique. Naturally, he could not agree to it anymore. Especially if this technique was cultivated to the 13th level, it would probably far surpass the 4 great inheritances of the carefree sect. Although Fang Qingshan had only broken through to the 5th level of the Dragon-Elephant Prajna technique, he was definitely not inferior to those who had cultivated to the 7th or even the 8th level. Body cultivation was originally an invincible method. Now that Fang Qingshan had cultivated to the 5th level, his body cultivation and qi cultivation had reached a state of balance. Teacher, disciple would like to bid farewell to you today. After completing the 5th level, it would take at least 3 years to cultivate to the 6th level. After experiencing the momentum of rapid progress, it would be difficult for Fang Qingshan to cultivate step by step and polish over a long period of time. Moreover, there was not enough time. Therefore, Fang Qingshan decided to bid farewell to Wu Yizi and the others. He wanted to travel around and see if he could come across any opportunities. Of course, another reason was that Li Qiushui and Wu Xingyin had pretended to be sisters in front of Wu Yazi, but they had turned their backs on him in the blink of an eye. As a junior who had inherited the influence of the Vulture Palace and the Western Xia country, Fang Qingshan was caught in the middle. He was in deep trouble, so he naturally had to escape. Fine, a real man's ambition is to travel far and wide. When you're young, you should travel more and see more things. It will be very beneficial to your cultivation. Wu Yazi naturally wouldn't stop him. Moreover, he knew that Fang Qingshan had just broken through to the 5th level of the Dragon-Elephant Prajna technique. It was impossible for him to make another breakthrough in a short period of time. Young people couldn't stand loneliness, so it was good to go out for a walk. After bidding farewell to Wu Yizi, Fang Qingshan led Duan Yu, Zhu, and Abai away from Beating Drum Mountain. After going down the mountain, the three of them were supposed to go their separate ways. Duan Yu wanted to go back to Dali to have a look, while Zhu and Abai were also worried about their young master and wanted to go back to Swallow Dock. At this time, they suddenly heard that Shaolin was holding a heroes conference, so they decided to go to Shaolin to have a look. This heroes conference was different from the heroes conference of the Virtuous Manor. Shaolin ruled the martial arts world, so Duan Yu believed that his young master would be invited to the heroes conference. Zhu and Abai also believed that their young master would go. But Fang Qingshan didn't want to join in the fun. He wanted to meet the sweeping monk. If there was anyone in the Celestial Dragon sect who could surpass the 3 Xiaoyao elders, it would be the unknown old monk from Shaolin Temple. In the way of cultivation, as long as one met the requirements in one aspect, one could accelerate one's progress. Therefore, Fang Qingshan could make such rapid progress with the help of Wu Yizi's internal force and the explanation of Wu Yizi and the other two. He went to Shaolin this time because he wanted to see if the old monk could give him some advice. As for whether the old monk was willing or not, Fang Qingshan had his own way. After all, a gentleman could be deceived with his methods. There was still time, so they were not in a hurry. They stopped from time to time and took it as a way to relax. On this day, they had missed their lodging, so they had to make do in the suburbs. However, they were all young people, and all of them were highly skilled in martial arts. Although it was not as comfortable as the inn, they felt that it was a different kind of feeling. They did not feel that it was unbearable. On the contrary, they were in high spirits as they started a fire to hunt and roast meat. They were very busy. Crackle! The sound of burning firewood and the smell of barbecued meat filled the small forest. Coupled with the beautiful scenery, it was a pleasant thing. At a certain moment, Fang Qingshan's ears suddenly moved and he raised his eyebrows. Not long after, Duan Yu also exclaimed. Duan Yu kowtowed in front of Li Qiushui's statue, practiced underworld divine kung fu and wave-like subtle steps. In addition, he saved Wu Yizi and robbed the Duan family's sun finger. In order to make up for it, Li Qiushui really accepted him as a disciple. With the guidance of Li Qiushui and the others, Duan Yu was not stupid. It turned out that he just didn't want to practice martial arts. As for not wanting to practice martial arts, he fell into Li Qiushui's hands. There were many ways to torture him, just like Xuzhu, who fell into Wu Xingyun's hands. Without the bone-chilling cold, how could one smell the fragrance of plum blossoms? Now, not only did Duan Yu control his inner strength, but his 6-pulse magical sword was no longer ineffective. Even though it was not as effective as Fang Qingshan, it was comparable to Jiumaji. Child Duan, what's wrong? Abai and Zhu, who were concentrating on the barbecue, looked at Duan Yu in confusion. It seems that I heard the sound of weapons colliding in the distance. Duan Yu was still not confident, so he looked at Fang Qingshan and wanted to confirm it. Yes. Fang Qingshan nodded. One is chasing the other, and they seem to be coming in our direction. Interesting. It seems that we won't be lonely tonight. In response, Zhu and Abai couldn't help but smile playfully. I hope they won't provoke us. Otherwise, we can only pray for our own good. With two experts like Fang Qingshan and Duan Yu here, the two of them naturally wouldn't have anything to worry about. In fact, they even started to worry for the people who were coming, hoping that they would be more cautious. Otherwise, the outcome would be unpredictable. The four of them talked and laughed, completely ignoring the people and things that were coming. Not long after, even as Zhu and Abai heard a messy footstep. They looked towards the direction of the sound and saw a somewhat embarrassed figure rushing over in a hurry. He was about 40 years old, with a high nose and deep eyes. His face was brown and yellow, and his eyes were as sharp as a sword. He seemed to be heavily injured, and his white robe was dyed red. His face was pale, and he looked fatigued. In his panic, he did not know where to go. When he saw Fang Qingshan and the others, he was shocked. He stopped in his tracks and almost fell to the ground. Behind him was a child. Chapter 55. Who are you people? The man looked at Fang Qingshan and the others with vigilance, protecting the child behind him, half squatting on the ground, like a toad. It seemed that as long as Fang Qingshan and the others had the slightest problem, they would attract a thunderous blow. You are really strange. We were staying here. You broke in, and you still asked who we are. We haven't asked you yet, Abai said with a displeased look. The man ignored Abai's words, but his eyes were locked on Fang Qingshan because his intuition told him that this person was the most dangerous. Fang Qingshan also looked at the man curiously. Through the perception of his aura, he found that if this person was not seriously injured and had his cultivation broken, he would not be worse than Jiumaji or even Duan Yu at this moment. However, when Fang Qingshan surveyed the Sky Dragon sect, he did not see such an unknown expert appear out of nowhere. However, thinking that the Sky Dragon sect was a complete world after all, it was normal for there to be some unknown masters, just like the three Xiaorao elders and the Shaolin sweeping monks who were unknown in the eyes of ordinary people. So he was a little relieved. Hot. Uncle Ouyang, I am hot. At this moment, the child behind him suddenly whispered weakly. Ouyang Shi's complexion suddenly changed. He took the child from behind into his arms. Only then did Fang Qingshan and the others see clearly. They saw a child of 11 or 12 years old, who looked like a little boy that people would like at first sight. At this moment, the situation seemed to be a little bad, but he saw that his whole body was red, as if he had been roasted in a stove. His lips were a little dry, and the whole person had fallen into a state of coma. There was no time to think too much. Ouyang Shi raised his hand and slapped the back of the child, and his internal force was continuously transmitted, but he wanted to use his own internal force to suppress the child's injury. Unfortunately, he was already seriously injured, and coupled with the domineering internal force, not only did it not have any effect, but both of them spat out a mouthful of blood. Young master, what's wrong with you? Young master? Ouyang Shi completely ignored the fact that her own injuries had worsened. When she saw the child vomit blood, she immediately turned pale with fright. Her concern for the child caused her to become flustered, causing her to shake the child up and down. If you keep shaking like this, I'm afraid that even if this child is fine, he will be in trouble because of your shaking. Seeing this, Zhu and Abai couldn't help but emit a motherly radiance and scolded Ouyang Shi. When Ouyang Shi heard this, she quickly stopped her movements and froze in midair. Fang Qingshan couldn't help but shake his head. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly raised his head and looked in the direction of the Ouyang family. In the next moment, Ouyang Shi and Duan Yu also turned to look in the direction of the voice. However, their actions were completely different. Duan Yu remained calm and nonchalant, but Ouyang Shi's expression changed drastically. She wanted to stand up and carry the child away, but because of her previous injuries, she was unable to do so and fell back to the ground. At this moment, the sound of clothes fluttering in the wind could be heard. Not long after, 4 fair-skinned men appeared on the stage like ghosts. I was wondering why the Poison King didn't leave. Turns out he has a helper. One of the men chuckled in a high-pitched voice. His gaze swept across Fang Qingshan and the others. Just like the Poison King, the 4 of them felt an inexplicable fear towards Fang Qingshan, so they didn't dare to act rashly. May I know how to address you, young masters and young ladies? I am Hua Buxi, a subordinate of the Great Song Dynasty's Imperial City Department. I have been ordered to capture the traitors and fugitives. Hua Buxi bowed to Fang Qingshan and the others and said solemnly, "Let me introduce you. This is the Poison King, one of the 4 great guardian kings of the Mani sect. The one behind him is the son of the rebel king of Jiangnan, Fang La, and the holy son of the Mani sect. These two have been hunted by the entire world." Poison King? Holy Son? Hearing this, a Zhu and a Bai couldn't help but exclaim. As the Murong clan of Jiangnan, they were no strangers to the Mani sect. When the Mani sect was at its peak, it swept across Jiangnan like a curtain of pearls and occupied half of the country. Murong Fu was determined to restore his country, so how could he not pay attention to such a force? Therefore, both of them had heard of the Poison King and the saint's name, especially the Poison King, who made people tremble in fear just by hearing his name. Although his martial arts were not the most powerful, his methods were the most terrifying. It seems that the two ladies are aware of it. Eunuch Hua smiled and said, "Now that the Mani sect's forces in Jiangnan have been uprooted by the imperial court, we were ordered to capture these 2 people. Therefore, please don't make things difficult for us." Eunuch Hua's soft but firm words made the scene quiet. Although a Zhu and a Bai's motherly instincts were aroused, and seeing the Holy Son's heavily injured and uncomfortable appearance made them feel a little uncomfortable, they also knew that it was only for the sake of speaking up. After all, they weren't related to the Mani sect at all. If they provoked the terrifying Imperial City Department because of the 2 of them, it would be a sin. For a moment, a Zhu and a Bai did not speak. Duan Yu's kindness was always given to beauties. Ouyang Shi was vigilantly holding the Holy Sun while looking at Fang Qingshan. Eunuch Hua and the others were somewhat indifferent. According to common sense, when he said this, Fang Qingshan and the Poison King were just strangers who met by chance, so naturally he would just stand by and watch. After all, they weren't related to the Imperial City Department, so the loss outweighed the gain. Unfortunately, things went beyond the expectations of everyone present. When Fang Qingshan heard that Ouyang Shi and the child were the Mani sect's Dharma King and Holy Son, he suddenly thought of something. Fang Qingshan's dragon elephant prajna technique had been cultivated to the 5th level. If he wanted to break through to the 6th level according to the current situation, he would need at least 3 years without an opportunity, and he obviously didn't have that much time. Therefore, when Wu Yazi and the others couldn't give him more help, the only thing that Fang Qingshan thought of was the sweeping monk in the Shaolin Temple, so he wanted to go to the Shaolin Temple to ask. However, as mentioned before, as long as one of the requirements was met, the speed of cultivation could be accelerated. In addition to the companion, who could teach and solve doubts, the other 3 methods were also possible. Originally, Fang Qingshan didn't think that the other 3 methods could help him to this extent. After all, Wu Yazi's internal force, just like Fang Han's 9 cycles golden elixir, had already accelerated his cultivation. There were almost no other things that could surpass him, and those that were lower than him had almost no effect. As for the Dharma, the Earth, and the Heavenly Dragon sect, there was no heavenly paradise that could speed up cultivation. As for the Dharma, he could learn from others and make up for his shortcomings. After seeing the martial arts of the Carefree sect and the 6-pulse magic sword of the Duan family, the only things that interested him were the Shaolin I Jin Jing and the 9 Yang divine skill. However, happiness came too suddenly. When he heard about Mani sect, Fang Qingshan remembered that there was actually a martial art that was more suitable for him. Chapter 56. Heaven and Earth Great Shift. Yes, thinking of the Manichaeism, Fang Qingshan thought of the Ming cult. Thinking of the Ming cult, the Heaven and Earth Great Shift naturally appeared in Fang Qingshan's mind. The Ming cult originated from Persia, so the Heaven and Earth Great Shift was no exception. This divine skill was somewhat similar to the dragon elephant prajna art. Both were extremely difficult to cultivate and required time. Moreover, no one had ever cultivated it to the highest level. This skill was divided into 7 levels. Those with high comprehension needed 7 years to cultivate the first level and twice as much for the second level. This made it even more difficult. The author of the secret manual had only cultivated to the 6th level. Since ancient times, no one had cultivated to the 7th level. However, the difference between this and the dragon elephant prajna art was that this divine skill was a chi cultivation method. So, as long as one's inner force was cultivated to the highest level, it would be twice the result with half the effort. Zhang Wuji was able to achieve this in advance, although it was not just because he was the protagonist of the story. After Zhang Wuji reached the highest level of 9 suns, he cultivated the heaven and earth great shift. In just a few days, he cultivated this divine skill to an unprecedented level. Aside from the main factor, if Fang Qingshan cultivated this martial art, even if he spent a little more time, it would still be a matter of course. After all, because of Wu Yizi's teachings, his inner force was too vigorous. Even if he consumed some of it to cultivate the dragon elephant prajna art, it was definitely not inferior to Zhang Wuji's highest level of 9 suns inner force. Although the heaven and earth great shift was the Ming cult's ultimate skill, it was not necessarily better than the Shaolin Temple's I Ching scripture, 9 suns divine skill, or even the carefree sect's 4 ultimate skills. The reason why Fang Qingshan valued this martial art was because it had a characteristic that other divine skills did not have. After cultivating the heaven and earth great shift, one could stimulate one's greatest potential, gather the principles of martial arts, copy the opponent's martial arts, create the opponent's flaws, accumulate energy, stick the palm energy, divert the enemy's energy, change the yin and yang qi, borrow the opponent's energy, and so on. What Fang Qingshan valued the most was to stimulate one's greatest potential. As long as he cultivated the heaven and earth great shift to the highest level, there was no doubt that the time he needed to cultivate the dragon elephant prajna art would be greatly reduced. If one did not accept a gift from the heavens, one would be punished. In such a situation, how could Fang Qingshan let it go? You're from Manichaeism? Is it from Persia? Fang Qingshan ignored Uniquo's words and asked the king of poisons with interest. As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of the 3 people behind Uniquo changed. Their arms tightened, but Uniquo shook his head and gestured for them to wait and see. Fang Qingshan put too much pressure on him. It seemed that if he made a move, he would be in trouble. Therefore, before Fang Qingshan truly sided with the Poison King, he had to suppress his desire to make a move, lest he angered Fang Qingshan. Duan Yu and the other 2 looked at each other and saw a trace of surprise in each other's eyes. They had been with Fang Qingshan for a long time, and they all knew that Fang Qingshan was not a compassionate and curious person. He would not do anything that was not related to him unless it touched his bottom line or it was really a trivial matter. Otherwise, he would never do anything that was strenuous and unrewarding. There was only one thing that could make him take action, and that was what he wanted to obtain from it. At that moment, the 3 of them felt slightly curious. They did not know what it was that could make Fang Qingshan want it so badly. Yes, our Manichaeism came from Persia, the king of poisons said in a deep voice with a sad face. In the past, not to mention when the Manichaeism was sweeping across the south of the Yangtze River, even when he was in his heyday, he could stop a child from crying. Now, a dragon had a bright future, while a tiger had fallen to the plains. His life and death were in the hands of others. Of course, if he was alone, he would rather die than live in dishonor. Unfortunately, the Holy Sun was still in his hands. If he died, he would die. 20 years later, he would be a hero again. However, the Holy Sun was the only child of the hierarch and also the hope of the Manichaeism. He could not give up on him. Is the heaven and earth great shift the most powerful magic of your Manichaeism? Fang Qingshan nodded and asked, "How do you know?" Although the Manichaeism was powerful, it was a force that rebelled against the emperor. What they wanted to do was to overthrow the imperial court, so they did not have a great reputation in the Jianghu. Therefore, not many people knew about the heaven and earth great shift. Therefore, when he heard Fang Qingshan's words, the king of poisons raised his vigilance again. After all, this was an era where people treasured their own things. Not to mention the heaven and earth great shift. Even the skills of ordinary people would rather be buried in their coffins than be passed down. Of course, the king of poisons would not be nice to someone who had passed down their skills. So it's true. Fang Qingshan heaved a sigh of relief. hand over the heaven and earth great shift to me, and I will save your lives. What do you think? That's impossible. The king of poisons disagreed. Uniqua and the others couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. Uniqua knew that he couldn't allow them to continue talking. Otherwise, he would be in a passive position. So, he hurriedly said to Fong Qingshan, "Young master, why don't we capture them and interrogate them about the heaven and earth teleportation? What do you think?" Fong Qingshan did not answer Uniqua. Instead, he asked the king of poisons with a faint smile. "Huh? You want to interrogate me about the heaven and earth great shift? Dream on." The king of poisons snorted. His eyes were filled with coldness. "You should know that you are not the only one here. If you fall into their hands, you can endure all kinds of torture. But what about the child in your hand?" Fong Qingshan said calmly. "Moreover, the child in your hand seems to have been hit by some extreme Yongpom technique. Even if you are lucky enough to escape, you will die if you do not receive treatment in time. There are not many people in the Jianghu who are capable of doing that. And there are even fewer people who are willing to offend the Imperial City Department." Seeing that the king of poisons was silent, Uniqua became anxious. He did not care if he might anger Fong Qingshan. He waved his hand, and a handful of silver needles flew towards the king of poisons and the holy sun. Then he said, "Mister, don't worry. Capture them, and I will definitely get what you want from them." "Okay, I agree." The king of poisons, who had been hesitating, made a prompt decision and agreed to Fong Qingshan's request. He had to lower his head when he was under the eaves, regardless of whether it was the current crisis or the treatment of the young master. Without Fong Qingshan's help, it would be impossible. The cultivation method was dead, but the human body was alive. As long as the young master could survive, everything was possible. "Okay." Hearing that, Fong Qingshan's eyes lit up. He patted the ground and moved like a ghost. Without moving his feet, he appeared in front of the king of poisons and the old master. He waved his hands, and a Taiji fist appeared in the air. It turned into a whirlpool and swallowed all the silver needles. Chapter 57. Young Master, do you know what you're doing? Seeing that Fong Qingshan had really interfered, Uniqua's expression immediately turned icy cold. His sharp and ear-piercing voice sounded like silver needles. "I'm being kind, but you're refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. Do you really think that the Imperial City Department is a pushover?" "That's right. Even the Schallenberger sect doesn't dare to meddle in our affairs. How dare you interfere? You must be tired of living. If you know what's good for you, get out of here immediately. Don't get yourself into trouble. Otherwise, it'll be too late to regret it. Don't say that I didn't warn you. You won't shed tears until you see your coffin. Since you dare to interfere, the palace is short of manpower recently. I think they're quite good looking. Let's capture them and bring them back to the palace." As soon as Uniqua finished speaking, the impatient others immediately shouted, "Imperial City Department? Is it very powerful?" Fong Qingshan's expression was originally calm, but when he heard that they wanted to capture him and bring him back to the palace, his expression turned cold. "I only wanted to obtain the heaven and earth great shift. I didn't want to cause trouble. Since you're seeking death, don't blame me." Confucianism used literature to break the law, while chivalry used martial arts to break the law. The people of the Jianghu were all proud sons of heaven. It was common for people who looked down on nobles to kill officials and rebel. Even ordinary people were like that, not to mention Fong Qingshan. At his level of martial arts cultivation, it was useless even if he used an army to encircle him. If there were too few people, they would just be sending themselves to death. If there were too many people, no one could stop him if he wanted to leave. Since they couldn't do anything to him, he naturally didn't fear the imperial court. Moreover, Fong Qingshan wasn't an ordinary person of the Jianghu. He was the sect master of the Carefree sect. Although it was only a sect of the Jianghu, it could mobilize forces that were not weaker than a country. Therefore, Uniqua and the others were wasting their efforts to use the Imperial City Department to threaten Fong Qingshan. As soon as he finished speaking, Uniqua's heart palpitated. Without thinking, he shouted, "Do it!" Following that, the three people behind him dashed toward Fong Qingshan like ghosts. They shot out silver needles one after another, which glowed in the dark night and moved as fast as lightning. As for Uniqua himself, he turned halfway and rushed towards a Zhu and a Bai. His idea was good. They had no chance of winning against Fang Qingshan. Naturally, the only way was to make him hesitate in taking action. Only then would they be able to complete their mission and retreat in one piece. Unfortunately, dreams were beautiful, but reality was cruel. Because Fang Qingshan was too much of a threat, Uniqua only focused on him and neglected Duanyu, who was dressed like a delicate scholar. The four of them could be considered experts in the Jianghu, especially Uniqua, who was not inferior to Murongfu. It was a pity that he was still lacking compared to the current Duanyu and the Poison King. The reason why the four of them were chasing after the Poison King was because his martial arts had been broken, and he had less than a tenth of his strength. If it wasn't for his superb poison skills, he would have been trapped like a turtle in a jar. Originally, they had thought that they would succeed, but who knew that something unexpected would happen halfway through? Seeing Uniqua pouncing toward a Zhu and a Bai like an eagle pouncing on its prey, not only did a Zhu and a Bai not show any signs of panic on their faces, but instead looked at him with pity. This made Uniqua's heart skip a beat. Then, there was no then. The originally harmless Duan Yu suddenly raised his hand, and the little Shang sword on the thumb of his right hand suddenly shot out like a crossbow, fiercely shooting towards Uniqua's chest. What? As the most majestic sword chi among the 6 pulse divine swords, the little Shang sword not only had a great momentum, it was also as fast as a bolt of lightning. The moment it left Duan Yu's finger, it appeared on Uniqua's chest in the next moment. Almost in that instant, Uniqua felt as if his heart had been ruthlessly squeezed. All the hairs on his body stood on end, and his pupils constricted. Almost subconsciously, the silver needles that were infused with all the inner force in his body appeared in front of the sword chi. Bang! Although Uniqua was not bad, he could not compare to Duan Yu. Not only had Duan Yu caught him off guard, he had even used the 6 pulse divine swords. In the end, he was not spared. The little Shang sword knocked away the silver needles, and then it pierced through Uniqua's chest without losing any momentum. The enormous force directly sent Uniqua flying into the air, like a kite with its string cut. He smashed through a dozen or so trees before falling heavily to the ground. And on Fang Qingshan's side, there was no need to talk about it. 3 palm strikes from afar sent the remaining 3 eunuchs flying at a speed even faster than when they had arrived. After smashing through a patch of trees, they fell lifelessly to the ground. The Poison King had originally overestimated Fang Qingshan, but at this moment, he realized that he had still underestimated him. When he was at his peak, he naturally had thousands of ways to deal with Uniqua and the other 3 eunuchs. But to be able to do it as easily as Fang Qingshan did, even if their leader was still alive, he might not be able to do it. What surprised him even more was Duan Yu's performance. He looked harmless, but he did not expect his attacks to be so powerful. The Poison King secretly estimated that if he did not use his poison, he would most likely lose if they fought. Because this kind of sharp finger technique and sword chi were the natural nemesis of his martial arts. His martial arts had been broken by a eunuch with a silver needle. What he did not know was that even if he used poison, it would be useless, because Duan Yu had eaten the king of all poisons, the mantis vermilion toad. He was immune to all poisons. Thank you for your help, young master. The Poison King took a deep breath and bowed to Fang Qingshan and the others. There's no need for that. I was only willing to help because of the heaven and earth great shift. Fang Qingshan waved his hand. As long as young master can save my young master, Ouyang Jing will give it to you with both hands. Ouyang Jing said solemnly. I hope you keep your word, otherwise I can save lives and kill people. Fang Qingshan's tone did not fluctuate at all, as if he was chatting, but Ouyang Jing felt a chill in his heart. Bring the child here. Fang Qingshan said lightly. Abai, give him some Tiger and Dragon Good Fortune pill. The Tiger and Dragon Good Fortune pill was a secret healing elixir specially refined by Shuemuhua. It was specially given to her by her master Kong Guangling to save her life when she left. Yes, young master, Abai responded. Taking the boy from Ouyang Jing's arms, Fang Qingshan felt as if he was holding a stove. He put his hand on the boy's pulse to feel it, but he was almost shaken away by the rebound force. Fang Qingshan couldn't help but sigh. What a domineering and masculine internal force. I'm afraid it's not inferior to eldest uncle's 8 desolations and 6 directions. Can the young master still be saved? Ouyang Jing asked nervously. Medicine and poison were inseparable. Since he was called the Poison King, his medical skills were naturally not weak. The reason why he did not save people was because he had no time to escape and because he had no other way. Chapter 58. If I didn't save him, would you not have given me the heaven and earth great shift? Fang Qingshan said calmly. Ouyang Jing didn't say anything, but his meaning was obvious. The reason why he had been struggling at death's door until now was because he had a belief. He wanted to bring the young master out alive. The future of the Mani religion was in his hands. If he gave up on this belief, he wouldn't care even if the flood reached the sky. Don't worry. If it was someone else, I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to save him. But since you met us, you're lucky. Combining the martial arts used by the eunuchs earlier and the purity and masculinity of the inner energy in the child's body that was not inferior to the supremacy of 8 desolation and 6 directions. If Fang Qingshan's guess was correct, the child should have been injured by an expert who cultivated in the Sunflower Manual. Fang Qingshan had not exchanged blows with this person's martial arts, so he did not know who was stronger and who was weaker. However, just based on the inner energy left in the child's body, even if he were to encounter this person, he would not have absolute confidence in winning. This situation was similar to Zhang Wuji's Xian Ming Divine Palm. It was just that one was hard and one was soft, and one was yin and one was yang. There were 2 ways to treat the child's injury. One was to use the one yang finger like how Wu Xingyan had treated Wu Yazi. However, this method was not suitable for Fang Qingshan. Duan Yu could do it since he didn't really care about martial arts, but Fang Qingshan wouldn't do something like harming his own people to benefit himself. Besides, he had other methods. If he imitated Zhang Wuji's treatment method, he would let the child practice a martial art of extreme yin or extreme yang, or use his inner force to resolve the injury. However, Fang Qingshan's method was even simpler, and that was to use the devouring power of the dark North Divine Art to absorb this extreme yang inner force into his body and refine it with the dark North Divine Art. Go and treat yourself. When you're healed, the child will be healed too. Fang Qingshan said to Ouyang Jing. Unfortunately, it was completely useless. If he didn't see the young master in good condition, he wouldn't be at ease. Fang Qingshan couldn't help but shrug his shoulders. With a serious expression, Fang Qingshan activated the dark North Divine Art and placed his palm on the back of the child. The child, who was in a coma, couldn't help but let out a muffled groan, which made Ouyang Jing twitch. Fortunately, although this masculine inner force was pure and difficult to deal with, it was a rootless source after all. When it encountered Fang Qingshan's overbearing dark North Divine Art, it was immediately pulled out bit by bit. However, because a child's body was already very fragile, and now that he was injured by the palm force and burned by his inner force, he could no longer bear the burden. That was why Fang Qingshan had to carefully pull away. After about an hour, the charred black handprint on the child's chest gradually faded. "Oh!" Fang Qingshan breathed a sigh of relief and removed his hand from the child's vest. He waved to Abai and took a tiger and dragon good fortune pill and opened the child's mouth to feed it. Well, as long as he takes a good rest for a period of time, there will be no major problems. You should also go and heal. After healing, hand over the heaven and earth great shift that you promised me. Fang Qingshan adjusted his breath and said to Ouyang Jing. Ouyang Jing still ignored Fang Qingshan's words. He took the young lord from Fang Qingshan's arms and put his finger on the young lord's pulse to check carefully. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. He staggered and fell to the ground. Fang Qingshan shook his head. "Thank you, young master," I will never forget your kindness. Ouyang Jing took a breath and thanked Fong Qingshan. Forget it. We're just trading, Fong Qingshan said lightly. This is my Mani Sek's heaven and earth great shift. Listening to Fong Qingshan, Ouyang Jing was also a sensible person. He immediately took out a piece of sheepskin and handed it to Fong Qingshan. Fong Qingshan saw it and gently cut his finger and dripped a drop of blood on the sheepskin. Suddenly, on the white and clean sheepskin, a dense text appeared. How did young master know the secret of my Mani sect? Seeing this scene, Ouyang Jing, who originally wanted to tell Fong Qingshan how to use it, was suddenly shocked. His face was full of disbelief. If it wasn't for the mission, even he didn't know that this sheepskin recorded the supreme Mani Sek's heaven and earth great shift. He didn't know how to use it, but he didn't want to know the secret from Fong Qingshan, a foreigner. How I know is not important. Fong Qingshan naturally wouldn't say that he knew it from the future. He changed the topic and said meaningfully, Fortunately, you didn't fool me with a fake. Hearing this, Ouyang Jing's back immediately broke out in a cold sweat. The heaven and earth great shift was the Ming sect's supreme Mani sect. Even he himself hadn't practiced it. Although he had promised it before, it wasn't that he didn't want to go back on his word. However, Fong Qingshan's outstanding martial arts made him afraid. He didn't dare to do anything. After all, his young master's life and his life were still in Fong Qingshan's hands. At this moment, he was extremely glad that he made the decision. Seeing that Fong Qingshan knew so much about the Mani sect, if he had fooled him, he would have suffered the consequences of his own actions. He would also have to drag his young master down with him. Fong Qingshan didn't care about Ouyang Jing's thoughts. He lowered his head and silently memorized the heaven and earth great shift. After doing this 3 times and making sure that there was no difference, Fong Qingshan returned the sheepskin to Ouyang Jing. Uncle Ouyang. At this moment, the child woke up. He looked at Ouyang Jing and couldn't help but call out, Young master, you're awake. How do you feel now? Seeing that his young master had woken up, Ouyang Jing's face lit up. It's not hot anymore. Shu is fine now. Fong Shu was stunned for a moment. Then, he felt that the thing that made him uncomfortable had disappeared. He couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth, revealing a trace of a smile. His originally lifeless eyes started to become lively again. Uncle Ouyang, Shu doesn't have to die anymore, right? I won't die. I won't die anymore. Shu will inherit your father's dream and become an indomitable man. Ouyang Jing said with a smile. By the way, the reason why Shu is fine is because this young master saved you. No one knew what Ouyang Jing was thinking. He pointed at Fong Qingshan and said to Fong Shu, Oh? Fong Shu followed Ouyang Jing's finger and saw Fong Qingshan. He struggled to walk towards Fong Qingshan. Thank you, big brother, for saving my life. With the help of Ouyang Jing, Fong Shu directly arrived in front of Fong Qingshan. He knelt on the ground and said weakly but firmly, Get up. I only coveted your Mani Sek's heaven and earth great shift. It's just a deal. Fong Qingshan didn't expect them to do this. He quickly waved his hand, and a force lifted Fong Shu up. Big brother is so powerful. Fong Shu's eyes flashed with stars. I want to become as powerful as Big Brother in the future. As long as you work hard, you can definitely do it. Fong Qingshan touched his face and nodded encouragingly. Chapter 59. At an inn in a small city, Fong Qingshan sat alone in a quiet guest room. The scent of sandalwood wafted in the air, and the light penetrated through the windows, emitting a colorful glow. After separating from Ouyang Jing in the woods, Fong Qingshan did not immediately bring the group to the Shaolin Temple, but settled down in a small city nearby. Why did he go to the Shaolin Temple? He just wanted to ask the monk to give him some pointers and see if he could speed up his cultivation of the dragon-elephant prajna art. Now that he had the heaven and earth teleportation, he could finally develop his potential. Why would he neglect the basics? After all, Monk Wen Dao was asking someone to help him, and it was not guaranteed that he would succeed. Although he could play some tricks, it was better to rely on himself than on others. Since he could speed up his cultivation with his own efforts, why didn't Fang Qingshan take action right away? Besides, the pointers from others could only help him at the critical juncture, as it would help him avoid taking the wrong path. On the other hand, practicing the heaven and earth teleportation to improve his potential could benefit him for the rest of his life. Therefore, what other choice did he have? Surrounded by mist, he calmed his mind. Fang Qingshan sat with his legs crossed on the bed as the mantra of the heaven and earth teleportation flowed through his mind. The heaven and earth teleportation had 7 layers. The first layer focused on directing one's chi and exerting one's strength. The heaven and earth teleportation was not unique to the heaven and earth teleportation. The Taiji Fist, the 6 solar palms of Tianshan Mountain, and the dragon elephant prajna art all had similar mantras, but they focused on different aspects. For example, the yin and yang conversion of the 6 solar palms of Tianshan Mountain and the Taiji Fist were similar to the heaven and earth teleportation. Therefore, Fang Qingshan was very familiar with the mantras, and together with his powerful inner force, it was like adding wings to a tiger. It would take an ordinary person 7 years to master the first layer, but it only took him half an hour to master it. Although he was not like Zhang Wuji, who had a cheat mode and succeeded after 1 round, Fang Qingshan was already very satisfied. Striking while the iron was hot, Fang Qingshan took a deep breath and suppressed the joy in his heart. He began to move his circulatory cycle according to the 2nd level of the heaven and earth great shift. When he was practicing the 2nd level of the mental cultivation method, Fang Qingshan felt cold air shooting out from his 10 fingers. Half of his face turned red, while the other half turned green. This was because of another characteristic of the heaven and earth great shift, which was the conversion of yin and yang. When it came to the conversion of yin and yang, the Taiji Fist and the Tianshan 6 solar palms were the experts, especially the Tianshan 6 solar palms. The 6 characters in this palm technique actually represented the 2 yang numbers in the Book of Changes, so it could also be called the Tianshan yin-yang palm. The Tianshan 6 solar palm might not be comparable to the heaven and earth great shift in terms of grade, but in terms of the conversion of yin and yang, it was superior to the heaven and earth great shift. From the beginning, Fang Qingshan had been studying Taiji Fist and Tianshan 6 yang palm. Although he didn't dare to say that he knew the conversion of yin and yang like the back of his hand, he had his own unique insights. Therefore, cultivating the 2nd level was even smoother than the first. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, his vital chi was connected, and there were no accidents. The 2nd level of the heaven and earth great shift was cultivated by Fang Qingshan. Because of Zhang Wuji's example, Fang Qingshan knew that as long as his inner force was complete, cultivating the heaven and earth great shift would be like using a cheat code. It was like a flood that was unstoppable. However, Fang Qingshan was happy from the bottom of his heart to be able to break through 2 levels of the mental cultivation method in just over an hour. It wasn't because he was happy about the achievement of cultivating this martial art. Instead, through this martial art, not only did he become more proficient in the use of various forces, but he also developed his potential. It should be known that Fang Qingshan had been sick for more than 10 years. Although his comprehension was good, in terms of physique, not to mention those geniuses, even ordinary people were better than him. When he came to the celestial dragon world, first, Wu Yazi passed on his skills to him, allowing him to experience a complete rebirth. Then, he had the dragon elephant prajna art to strengthen his foundation. Now he had the heaven and earth great shift to increase his potential. Fang Qingshan believed that even if his physique was not as good as those born sacred geniuses, it should be comparable to Fang Han's. After all, he was originally just a servant and did not have an amazing physique. Before the opening of the luck, his illness was only slightly better than Fang Qingshan's. Even if he got the 9 apertures golden elixir later, it was a subtle process. Keep it up. Fang Qingshan continued to operate the 3rd level of the mental cultivation method. This level of mental cultivation method took a little more effort. It took nearly an hour for Fang Qingshan to master it. Then, it took 4 hours for the 4th level, and Fang Qingshan also mastered it without any delay. But at this point, the amount of internal energy required to cultivate the heaven and earth great shift would be too much for an ordinary martial arts expert. Even people like Geomaji might not be able to handle it. Following the cultivation of the fifth floor, the illustrious Yang Dingtian was stuck on this floor. When Yang Dingtian was still alive, apart from the Wudong sect's Reverend Zhang Sanfeng, no one might be able to beat him. It was imaginable how much internal energy he had. Even if he was stuck at the peak of the fourth level, he had no choice but to cultivate in seclusion. From this, it could be seen that the difficulty of this level was more than a few times that of the fourth level. In the guest room, Fang Qingshan's face was alternating between green and red. When his face was green, his body was trembling as if he had fallen into ice. When his face was red, his forehead was sweating profusely. Fortunately, Duan Yu and the others didn't see this. Otherwise, they would have thought that he had gone mad. It was fortunate that when one went mad, apart from forcefully cultivating, it was because of an unstable temperament. But Fang Qingshan's internal energy was much more vigorous than Zhang Wuji's. As for temperament, it might not be comparable to Zhang Wuji's pure and innocent heart, but he cultivated the dragon-elephant prajna art and visualized the immemorial dragon-elephant technique to suppress his mind and subdue his inner demons. Hence, it was more daunting than dangerous. After 12 hours, he finally succeeded in cultivating the fifth level. As expected, the saying that one can easily cultivate the heaven and earth great shift after achieving phenomenal success in internal energy is fake. Different people have different fates. Fang Qingshan opened his eyes and lamented silently. He cultivated the northern underworld divine technique. In every aspect, it was definitely not inferior to the 9 Yang divine technique that Zhang Wuji cultivated. However, the amount of inner energy that he had consumed just now was definitely not less than what Zhang Wuji had consumed after he had mastered his inner energy. Had it not been for the fact that Fang Qingshan's internal energy wasn't at the phenomenal success stage and had inherited Wu Yizi's 70 years of cultivation, he wouldn't have gone mad, let alone cultivating to the fifth level. This point could be seen from the generations of Ming cult's cult masters. Even a person like Yang Dingtian was stuck at the peak of the fourth level. From this, it could be seen that Zhang Wuji was definitely a cheat. Fortunately, even though Fang Qingshan wasn't fated to be the main character, his knowledge was far superior to other cultivators. It was even more so for his internal energy. He even had the dragon-elephant suppression in his Naiwan palace. Hence, he was able to cultivate the fifth level without any mishaps. Chapter 60. After Fang Qingshan mastered the fifth level, he felt that all his mental energy was at his will. He could release it whenever he wanted and withdraw it whenever he wanted. Everything was done according to his will. His entire body felt extremely comfortable. With that in mind, Fang Qingshan got off the bed and stood in the middle of the room. He slowly started practicing Taiji Fist. For a moment, Fang Qingshan's body moved casually. Taiji followed him. He moved freely in the air, like floating clouds and flowing water. A large circle covered a small circle. A flat circle covered a vertical circle. A straight circle covered a slanted circle. Before one circle was completed, the second circle was already formed. They were all interconnected. There was me and you and me. Grasping the sparrow's tail, single whip, white crane spreads its wings, block and hammer, seal and seal. Everything was at his fingertips. He was like an antelope hanging its horn. Phew! After a while, Fang Qingshan spat out a mouthful of turbid air. Like a sharp arrow, he slowly opened his eyes. He saw a Taiji made of dust under his feet. The tables and chairs around him were completely unharmed. Fang Qingshan had already reached the point of perfection when it came to grasping strength in a small area. He practiced a set of Taiji Fist and tested his body and martial arts control. It also relieved his mental fatigue. Fang Qingshan returned to the bed and started the last level of Heaven and Earth Great Shift. Why was it the last level? Heaven and Earth Great Shift had a total of 7 levels. He had only cultivated to the 5th level. Logically speaking, it should be the second to last level. However, although the Heaven and Earth Great Shift had 7 levels, the expert who had created the Heaven and Earth Great Shift had not mastered it himself. He had merely relied on his intelligence and imagination to strive for variations. He had written down his own conjecture of the 7th level. It was completely out of his imagination and seemed right, but was actually wrong. If someone who didn't know about it forcefully cultivated it, they would go berserk at the last moment. They would either go crazy or become paralyzed. They might even die from severing their meridians. Therefore, Feng Qingshan directly gave up the 7th level of cultivation. He is just borrowing time to lay the foundation in the heavenly dragon world. He doesn't want to practice any peerless magic skills. Moreover, this is a low martial arts world. Compared with the magic skills in the immortal world, it is not reasonable. Moreover, this magic skill has the danger of chi deviation. How can Feng Qingshan be thankless and neglect the essentials? Unlike the previous 5 levels, Feng Qingshan was much more careful when cultivating the 6th level. After all, the cultivation of the 5th level of the Heaven and Earth Great Shift had consumed a lot of inner force that many people who had achieved great success in their inner force could not handle. Although he had 70 years of Wu Yizi's inner force, Feng Qingshan did not dare to let his guard down. After all, he was not the main character and was not favored by the heavens and earth. He had used all his luck to develop a new world, so he could not turn misfortune into blessing. With the operation of the 6th level of mental cultivation method, although he was already careful, his internal force still dissipated like a tide. Feng Qingshan was so scared that he almost wanted to stop cultivating immediately. Fortunately, he stabilized his mind with great perseverance. Even if he didn't refer to Zhang Wuji, the person who opened the plugin, Feng Qingshan didn't believe that the person who created the Heaven and Earth Great Shift would have a better internal force than himself. If even a person like him couldn't succeed in cultivation, Feng Qingshan absolutely didn't believe that anyone else could succeed in cultivation except for the plugin. Moreover, he not only had a strong internal force, but the speed of qi recovery was even better. After practicing the 9-yang divine art, the internal force's self-generating ability was integrated with everything, and Feng Qingshan's dark north divine art was also not weak. It swallowed the sky and the earth, and it was also boundless. It was just consumed here, and there was quickly replenished there. Therefore, although the consumption of the 6th level was very terrible, Feng Qingshan had a strong internal force as a foundation and an amazing recovery speed, and gradually supported it. Without thinking the dragon elephant suppression, Feng Qingshan put all his attention on the cultivation of the 6th level. He didn't know the sun and moon, and he didn't know hunger or fatigue. For 3 days, Feng Qingshan didn't step out of the room for 3 whole days, and he didn't eat or drink any food or water. Fortunately, Duan Yu and the other 2 had already seen it in Swallow Dock, so they weren't surprised or worried. At this moment, Feng Qingshan also reached a critical moment. His face turned green and red, sometimes like being roasted in a furnace, and sometimes like being frozen. His body, which was originally strong because of practicing the dragon elephant prajna technique, was actually shriveling up bit by bit. This was because the recovery speed of his internal force couldn't keep up with the consumption of internal force, and he could only cultivate energy into qi. Feng Qingshan also finally understood why, apart from Zhang Wuji, the 8th generation cult leader had the highest martial arts among the Ming cult's past leaders. It was said that he had practiced the Heaven and Earth Great Shift to the 5th level, but on the day he mastered it, he died from qi deviation. If this consumption continued, no one would be able to withstand it, and it would be a miracle not to die. Fortunately, this level didn't last long. In just a moment, Feng Qingshan's body trembled, and a surge of power passed through his body, and the surroundings of the bed and even the whole house collapsed in an instant. Boom! Duan Yu and the others who were bored out of their minds in the room were startled. They ran out to take a look, and their faces turned pale with fright. Just as they were about to dig up Feng Qingshan's corpse, a figure soared into the sky, made a turn in the air, and landed before the 3 of them. Young Master Yu, seeing Feng Qingshan's appearance, Abai and the others couldn't believe their eyes. Now Feng Qingshan was like a drug addict. He looked like he would be blown away by the wind. It was just that his eyes were shining like a lighthouse in the night. The aura around his body was like a mountain or a sea, making people feel a little suffocated. Ah, don't worry. I'll be fine after a period of recuperation. Fang Qingshan laughed and said without a care. Although the cultivation of the sixth layer was a bit dangerous, Fang Qingshan managed to get through it. Blessings are accompanied by misfortunes, and misfortunes are accompanied by blessings. The greater the effort, the greater the harvest. Although Fang Qingshan hasn't started the cultivation of the dragon-elephant prajna art yet, according to his feeling, it can save him at least 2/3 of the time. In other words, he may only need about a year to successfully cultivate the sixth layer. As long as he successfully cultivated the sixth layer, Fang Qingshan felt that he should be able to break through to the divine courage realm. If it was someone else, only by cultivating to the 10th layer could they be converted to the divine courage realm. The reason for this was because Fang Qingshan cultivated according to the correct method. Other people, including Jinlu and Fuwang, although cultivated to the 10th layer, but they only got the form, but not the spirit. Moreover, Fang Qingshan now had a guess that this dragon-elephant exercise is probably similar to the heaven and earth great shift, and the last 3 layers are probably the same as the 7th layer of the heaven and earth great shift, but it's just a fabrication and imagination. Otherwise, with so many geniuses in the thousands of years of esoteric Buddhism, especially many people who are still living in the past, no one has ever cultivated it. Even Jinlu and Fuwang only reached the 10th layer. Chapter 61. At the foot of Shaoshu Mountain, the quiet place of Buddhism had become more and more lively recently. Wave after wave of forces gathered towards the Shaolin Temple from all directions. The purpose was to participate in the hero assembly sponsored by Shaolin. People in Jianghu, except for a few people, loved to join in the fun. This was a kind of experience and also a kind of discussion. So, we often see that when something big is about to happen in Jianghu, there will be a gathering of heroes, and it will be very lively. And this time, it was not used in the hero assembly of the virtuous manner. Whether it was the initiator or the person to be dealt with, it was not the same. Although Xuemuhua had a little face in Jianghu, it was obviously dwarfed by Shaolin, which dominated the world of Jianghu. Although Qiao Feng used to be the leader of the beggar gang, he was now just a rat on the street, and everyone wanted to beat him up. The Murong family was a well-known Jianghu family in Jiangnan. In terms of power and influence, it far exceeded the abdicated Qiao Feng. On this day, Fang Qingshan and his party also came to the foot of Shaoshu Mountain. All martial arts in the world came from Shaolin. Looking up, Fang Qingshan couldn't help but feel inexplicably emotional. Shaolin was an indispensable role in Jianghu. When he was still in the age of chaos, he learned about it from various books, but he never really came. Today, his dream was fulfilled. Sister Azhu, do you think the young master has arrived? I don't know, he shouldn't have arrived yet. If the young master arrived, the hero assembly should have started. Looking at these people's unhurried appearance, obviously not. Just as Azhu and Abai were talking softly, there was a fighting sound not far away. Although it ended quickly, it still aroused the curiosity of Fang Qingshan and others. Although in the eyes of Fang Qingshan, the current Shaolin was somewhat unworthy of its name. Not to mention himself, even people like Zhou Maji could challenge the whole Shaolin Temple alone. But in the eyes of most people in Jianghu, Shaolin Temple was still the same. Now, the hero assembly held by Shaolin was about to begin. Fang Qingshan wanted to know who did not give Shaolin Temple face, and actually started fighting at the foot of the mountain. Therefore, the group of people looked at each other and moved towards the direction of the sound of the battle. When they got closer, there were already a lot of onlookers around. Everyone was pointing and whispering. From their conversation, Fang Qingshan and the others learned that someone was looking for trouble with the beggar sect. Although in Fang Qingshan's eyes, the beggar clan and the Shaolin Temple did not live up to their name. One claimed to be the world's #1 clan, the other claimed to be the world's #1 temple, but at least the Shaolin Temple still had a hidden killer, the floor-sweeping monk, while the beggar clan did not have Qiao Feng. They only had a few more people, but they were not worthy to be mentioned in public. As long as the veil was not lifted, in the eyes of Jianghu people, the beggar gang was still as illustrious as before. But now, Someone was making trouble for the beggar gang. Naturally, they could not miss such an exciting event. Who are you? Why did you make things difficult for the beggar sect? Do you think you can bully our beggar sect? Elder Sue's heart sank when he saw the 4 grand elders of the beggar sect fight one after another. The leader of the beggar sect didn't even lift a finger, and only his subordinates easily took care of them. That was especially true when he saw many Jianghu heroes watching from the sidelines. If he didn't handle this well, the beggar sect's illustrious reputation would be ruined. It doesn't matter who I am. Why should I make things difficult for your beggar sect? Do you think a bunch of beggars are qualified to fight with me? The leader, a beardless man with a jade-like face, slightly feminine, but not eccentric, said very impolitely. You. As soon as he said that, not only were the beggar sect members agitated, but also the other onlookers were also in an uproar. Although the members of the beggar sect were a bunch of beggars, it was the first time that someone looked down on them like that. What? I just want to ask you one question. Will you hand over the boy behind you or not? Seeing that the surroundings were noisy and that he was being watched like a monkey, the leader of the group could not help but snort coldly. He released his aura and swept out in all directions. An invisible pressure instantly caused the scene to fall silent. Will you hand him over or not? For a moment, all the people on the scene fixed their eyes on Elder Sue. The boy mentioned by the leader was just a boy he saved on his way to Shaolin Temple. It was not a big deal, and it would not be a big deal to hand him over. But at this moment, he was in a difficult position because he had been linked with the reputation of the beggar sect. Once he was handed over, the reputation that the beggar sect had painstakingly built up would be ruined. If he didn't hand him over, the 4 grand elders of the beggar sect had been defeated one after another by his subordinates. Once they really started to fight, the beggar sect would probably be doomed. At this time, the beggar sect members, including Elder Sue, couldn't help but miss Xiaofeng. If he had been there, he would not have been embarrassed and directly refused. What a pity! The crowd couldn't help but sigh. What? Is it really that difficult? The leader was a little impatient. I'll give you one last chance. I'll count to 3. If you don't make up your mind, I'll do it myself. 1, 2. As the number came out of the leader's mouth, the scene was frozen. Many people began to slowly retreat to the back. When the city gate was on fire, the fish in the moat would suffer. They didn't want to be involved. For a moment, they made way for Fang Qingshan and the others behind the crowd. Ba! At this moment, a Buddhist chant was heard. Xian Cheng came down from the mountain with a group of people. He was supposed to be a welcoming monk. He had to personally welcome those who were famous in Jianghu or had received the hero's invitation. After all, people had to carry out their duties. Since they had come all the way to Shaolin Temple, they had to show their gratitude. Hearing that the beggar sect had arrived, Xiancheng came to welcome them with his disciples. On the way, he heard that someone had a conflict with the beggar sect, so he hurried over. After all, this heroes' conference concerned the reputation of Shaolin Temple. They couldn't afford any trouble. Benefactors, you've come from afar. Why don't you go to Shaolin Temple and have a cup of tea first? Let's sit down and talk about it. Seeing the tense atmosphere, Xiancheng, the host, opened his mouth. Seeing Xiancheng's arrival, the people of the beggar sect couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, thinking that everything was all right. The other onlookers also sighed. Only Fang Qingshan knew that things were not so simple. No need. I still have something to do. As long as you hand over that guy, I'll turn around and leave. As expected, as soon as Xiancheng finished speaking, the man refused him directly without any hesitation. Ba, benefactor, can't you do this for the sake of Shaolin Temple? Xiancheng paused. Although his tone didn't change, everyone knew that he was unhappy. Chapter 62. Shaolin Temple? You Jianghu sects are so arrogant. First the beggar gang, and now the Shaolin Temple. Do you know who we are? The leader had long been impatient. When he heard Xiancheng's words, he was so angry that he laughed. We are the Imperial City Department. You are protecting the son of Fang La, the rebel of Jiangnan. Are you sure you want to sit down and talk now? As soon as this remark came out, the whole scene was quiet, even quieter than when he used force to oppress them. Although the Imperial City Department was not as active in Jianghu as the Class 1 Hall. The establishment of the Class 1 Hall in Shixia was based on the Imperial City Department, and its reputation was not much better than that of the Brocade Guards in the Ming Dynasty. The higher the court, the more worried about the emperor. The farther away from Jianghu, the more worried about the people. Although the court and Jianghu were inseparable, they rarely interacted with each other. Although the people of Jianghu cursed the imperial court, they remained in awe of them. Although the masters of the imperial court wanted to supervise Jianghu, they did not have the strength to do so. If they were not careful, they would stir up a rebellion. Therefore, generally speaking, Jianghu and the imperial court rarely interacted with each other. Once Jianghu and the imperial court mixed together, the situation would be very different. In particular, they just heard that the beggar gang was protecting the son of the rebel of Manichaeism. Seeing the beggar gang and the Shaolin Temple, the men of the Shaolin Temple looked gloomy, but they did not speak. The man could not help but nod with satisfaction. He waved his hand, and a small yellow door beside him came out and walked toward the target. The people of the beggar gang subconsciously looked at Elder Su. Seeing that he did not seem to see them, they quietly dispersed, revealing the fuse this time. Huh? Young master, it's really him. Seeing the child, who was a little desperate but not afraid, Zhu and Abi could not help but exclaim in unison. It turned out that the person the Imperial City Department wanted to catch was Feng Shu, who had just been rescued by Feng Qingshan. Although they had expected it when the man introduced himself and said that he was the son of the rebel, they were still a little surprised when they saw that it was Feng Shu. When they were in the woods, Feng Qingshan was eager to practice the heaven and earth great shift, so they parted ways with Ouyang Jing. Feng Qingshan went to an inn in the town to practice in seclusion, while Ouyang Jing took Feng Shu to the western region. After all, that place used to be the central region, and Ouyang Jing was from the western region, so he had a force there. But they didn't expect that blessings never come in pairs, and misfortunes never come singly. The Imperial City Department had eyes and ears all over the world. Not long after they separated from Feng Qingshan, they were caught up with them. In order to cover Feng Shu, Ouyang Jing brought up the rear alone. Feng Shu was just a child who had just recovered from a serious injury. He didn't know any martial arts and had to hide from the pursuers. Therefore, he had no choice but to sneak into the beggar gang. He had thought that since the Shaolin Temple held the heroes' assembly and gathered so many Jianghu people, the people of the imperial court should have some scruples. He could take the opportunity to escape, but he did not expect that they would still catch up. "Kid, just come with us obediently." The little yellow man laughed strangely and grabbed Feng Shu's shoulder. Feng Shu did not dodge, because he knew that it was completely useless. However, it was a pity that the opportunity that Uncle Ouyang had fought so hard for was wasted just like that. He did not expect that the people of the imperial court would dare to come to the heroes' assembly to arrest him. He also did not expect that none of the Jianghu heroes, who were known as the Light Son of Heaven and the Proud Marquis, would dare to stand up and resist. Even the Shaolin beggar sect was silent. Feng Shu couldn't help but raise his head and look around, as if it was his last sign of nostalgia. What? Suddenly, Feng Shu's eyes saw Feng Qingshan and the others. His lifeless eyes suddenly lit up with a strong sense of hope. But after a moment, the flame of hope that had just risen was extinguished, because he saw that Feng Qingshan saw him, but did not say anything. He thought that he was afraid of the imperial court, just like the Shaolin Temple and the beggar gang. Feng Shu's expression did not escape the little yellow man opposite him. He saw the sudden burst of light in Feng Shu's eyes, but it disappeared in a flash, as if nothing had happened. He thought that Feng Shu had companions, so he followed Feng Shu's eyes and happened to see Feng Qingshan and the others. The little yellow man was not in a hurry to catch Feng Shu. Instead, he asked Feng Qingshan and the others, "Who are you?" As soon as he said that, Feng Qingshan and the other three suddenly became the focus of the scene. The leading eunuch frowned. He did not expect that the little yellow man would cause trouble, but he also knew that he would not speak without thinking at this time, so he did not say anything. "Who are we? Do we need to report to you?" Feng Qingshan replied lightly. Initially, he had no intention of interfering. Although he had met Fang Shu once, there wasn't much of a relationship between them. Previously, he had only saved Fang Shu because of the Qian Kuan Great Shift to transaction. But he didn't expect that if he wanted to calm things down and stand by, he would have to see if others were willing to do so. Presumptuous. Do you think I didn't see the way this kid looked at you just now? When the little yellow man saw that the Shaolin beggar gang was shocked by the Imperial City Department, and Fang Qingshan still dared to talk to him like this, he suddenly became angry. I think you are with him. You are really strange. You can determine that we are also rebels just by looking at us? Abai sneered. Then I think you're also a rebel. I would rather kill wrongly than let go, the little yellow man said coldly. Interesting. Fang Qingshan waved his hand and stopped Abai from continuing to speak. He glanced at Fang Shu and then at the indifferent leading eunuch, and said lightly, if I say you are, then you are. The imperial court is really overbearing. I wasn't going to intervene. Since this is the case, I will protect Fang Shu. Fang Qingshan waved to Fang Shu and said, come here. Look, I said you can't get away with it. Now you are exposed. When the little yellow man saw this, he did not get angry but laughed, as if he had discovered a big secret. However, Fang Shu was surprised at first, and then he was a little embarrassed. He didn't want to implicate Fang Qingshan and others, so although he recognized Fang Qingshan and the other three, he did not ask for help, because he didn't know if Fang Qingshan and the other three could deal with these eunuchs of the Imperial City Department. It should be known that the eunuchs who were chasing them were much more powerful than the ones who had chased them to the woods. Even if Uncle Ouyang was at his peak, he could not beat him. Moreover, the strength of the imperial court was too great. It was simply an inescapable net. Once Fang Qingshan and the others were involved, they would almost be the enemy of the whole world. Just like when Uncle Ouyang took him to escape, they were almost intercepted from time to time. Just when Fang Shu was still hesitating, the little yellow man reacted and reached out to grab him. Humph! Fang Qingshan couldn't help but snort coldly. Since he said that he would protect Fang Shu, how could he watch him fall into the hands of the little yellow man? He stretched out his 5 fingers and clapped from a distance, and a palm force instantly shot out. Chapter 63. Be careful. The head eunuch's pupils constricted when he saw Fang Qingshan make his move. However, Fang Qingshan's move was too sudden and fast. He had no time to stop it. He could only warn the eunuch and hope that he would be careful and be able to dodge it. Unfortunately, he overestimated the eunuch and ignored Fang Qingshan. Although Fang Qingshan did not use his full strength with his current martial arts, even if he made a casual move, there would be very few people in the Jianghu who could withstand it. Bang! As soon as the palm force left his body, it appeared on Little Yellow's chest in the next moment. Little Yellow had no time to react at all. His hand was only a hair's breadth away from Fang Shu, and there was still a hint of a sinister smile on his face. Then, he felt the world spin around him, and his body went numb. His entire body was sent flying. Boom! He landed heavily in front of the head eunuch. You have to look at the owner before beating a dog. You are looking down on me, Eunuch Li, and the Imperial City Department. Eunuch Li narrowed his eyes as he looked at the eunuch, who was vomiting blood and looked like he was about to die. 2 rays of cold light pierced towards Fang Qingshan like knives and swords. His voice, which was already somewhat feminine, became even colder. Ah, you want to look at the owner before beating a dog? Why didn't you teach the dog a lesson when it was acting up earlier? Fang Qingshan was very unhappy with this kind of crazy behavior where everything he did was right, and it was a sin for others to resist. He sneered and said, I was wondering why so many people were forced to do this. Today, I have seen it for myself. Well, 1,000 cups of wine is not enough when you meet your own, but half a word is too much when you don't get along. Since things have come to this, you can draw the line. Fang Qingshan's expression was solemn. I remember that last time, 4 of my subordinates in the Imperial City Department were killed while they were chasing the traitor. 3 of them seemed to have been killed by the air-splitting palm force. Eunuch Li narrowed his eyes and looked at Fang Qingshan. With today's edition, it seems that you really need to go back and have a good talk with me. As long as you have the ability, I don't care, Fang Qingshan said calmly. Really? Before he could finish his sentence, except for a few people, no one else noticed that a faint needle light had already pierced through the air. The needle was small to begin with and did not attract attention easily. Coupled with the support of Eunuch Lee's inner force, it was as fast as lightning. Furthermore, because the area of impact was small, the sound of it tearing through the air was almost inaudible. Almost as soon as he finished speaking, a silver needle had already arrived between Fong Qingshan's eyebrows. Feeling the stinging pain between his eyebrows, Fong Qingshan could not help but feel somewhat shocked. He snorted coldly and placed 2 fingers in front of his eyes. Eunuch Lee's pupils involuntarily shrank to the size of a needle's eye when he saw the ferocious silver needles suddenly paused. With his martial arts, coupled with his swift movements, anyone who fought against him for the first time would suffer a great loss. In the past, the famous Poison King of the Mani sect was caught off guard by him and broke his toad technique with just 1 needle, although he had already overestimated Fong Qingshan. After all, not everyone could casually use the air-splitting palm. This was not a palm technique, but a technique. Only people with profound martial arts skills could do it. However, he still did not expect Fong Qingshan to be so amazing. Not only did he receive his silver needle head-on, but he actually came out unscathed. Thousands of thoughts flashed through his mind. At the same time, he cursed the people in the Imperial City Department who asked for information. When did such a young top expert appear in the Jianghu? There was actually no record at all. To the Imperial City Department who supervised the Jianghu, this was a great dereliction of duty. If it was known by the higher-ups, they would definitely be in deep trouble. Such swift and fierce skills. May I know your name? Eunuch Lee asked solemnly. Fong Qingshan. Without hiding anything, Fong Qingshan directly said his real name. Not to mention that he was originally not a person of this world and would leave sooner or later, with just his martial arts skills. As long as he was not surrounded by people of the same level, he could go anywhere in the world. I didn't expect there to be a young talent like you in the Jianghu other than northern Xiaofeng and southern Muro. Eunuch Lee sighed. What a pity. Why did you not think of serving the country, but instead walk together with the traitor? I really can't bear to. As long as you agree to join the Imperial City Department and hand over the traitor, we will write off today's matter. When Eunuch Lee said this, everyone was dumbfounded. Originally, the situation was on the verge of breaking out, but they did not expect that there would be a turn of events. He actually tried to recruit Fong Qingshan. In fact, the reason for this was that he really cherished talent. Fong Qingshan had such a cultivation at such a young age. If he could use him, the Imperial City Department would definitely go a step further. In addition, Fong Qingshan's strength put pressure on Eunuch Lee. Although it was just a short needle, he had never seen anyone in the Jianghu who could receive it so easily. Moreover, this was Shaolin Temple where the hero assembly was being held. If it was delayed for too long, he would make trouble, so he extended an olive branch to Fong Qingshan. Oh, if I join the Imperial City Department, what can I get? Fong Qingshan did not expect this and could not help but ask with interest. Don't be afraid. Young Master will not join the Imperial City Department. Hearing Fong Qingshan's words, Fong Shu, who had just calmed down, could not help but tremble. Seeing this, Azu could not help but comfort him in a soft voice. As long as young Master is willing to join the Imperial City Department, I promise that your status will be no lower than mine. In the future, when I see merit, I will definitely recommend you to Eunuch Huang and the Emperor. At that time, you will have glory, splendor, wealth, martial arts, weapons, beauties, and elixirs. Eunuch Lee thought that Fong Qingshan was tempted and was immediately happy. It was a pleasant surprise to be able to solve the problem peacefully and recruit Fong Qingshan. Therefore, he hurriedly made promises and tempted him. You really put in a lot of money. Fong Qingshan did not expect that Eunuch Lee would be so bold. Before Eunuch Lee's face showed a happy expression, Fong Qingshan continued, Unfortunately, these are not attractive to me at all. A man who is not content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Young Master, be careful not to choke to death. Eunuch Lee's warm face immediately turned cold. Humph! Our young master is in charge of the carefree sect. In the western regions, the heavenly mountain spirit Vulture Palace has 36 caves and 72 islands. He occupies half of the land. Western Xia, Class 1 Hall, and even the army are all under his command. The Imperial City Department is not even the person in charge. Do you think it can accommodate a true dragon? Before Fang Qingshan could speak, a Bai sneered. As soon as these words came out, the entire scene was in an uproar. Many people did not know about the Carefree sect, but as people from Shaolin Temple and the Imperial City Department, it was impossible for them not to know about it. What they did not expect was that Fang Qingshan was actually the Carefree sect master. No wonder he had such strength. Other people did not know about the Carefree sect, but the 36 caves, 72 islands, and Class 1 Hall were well known. How could they not be shocked that Fang Qingshan could mobilize them? Chapter 64. Looks like today's battle is unavoidable. There's no point in talking. Let's see who's stronger. Eunuch Li did not expect Fang Qingshan's backing to be so powerful. He could not help but let out a deep breath, and his aura gradually rose as he exhaled. Eunuch Li's aura was different from the gentleness he displayed before. Once Eunuch Li's aura was unleashed, an aura of extreme yang burst forth. It was born from the sun and illuminated the world. Seeing this, Fang Qingshan's expression turned solemn. He waved his hand at Duan Yu and the rest, signaling them to back off. Then, without holding back, he also released a domineering aura. They stood as equals, facing each other with equal harshness. If Eunuch Li's aura was like the sun, strong and domineering, then Fang Qingshan's aura was like a ferocious beast in human form, surging with killing intent. In an instant, a sharp, murderous aura swept out in all directions. Before they even made a move, the spectators had already retreated again and again. They could not help but feel shocked in their hearts. Facing each other from afar, going all out, sensing each other's aura, Eunuch Li and Fang Qingshan's eyes narrowed slightly, and their expressions turned slightly more solemn. Even though they had already predicted their opponents beforehand, they realized that this battle was much more difficult than they had imagined when they were actually fighting against each other. However, neither of them retreated. This was not allowed. After all, their auras were clashing against each other. If one side weakened, they would receive a thunderous strike from the other. When experts exchange blows, they could not afford to be careless, or they would face the danger of losing their lives. Moreover, they had met their match. At their level, a good opponent was extremely rare, so they naturally could not miss it. Kills. After facing each other for a moment, the two of them uttered a single word at a certain moment, and then their figures disappeared on the spot. Chi. A silver needle pierced towards Fang Qingshan's neck at lightning speed. Fang Qingshan did not dodge. With a wave of his arm, he drew an arc in front of his chest, and the silver needle that was piercing towards him immediately diverted to the east, turning back towards Eunuch Li. Fang Qingshan's move not only contained the Taiji Fist 4 Liang moving 1,000 Jin, but also the Heaven and Earth Great Shift. Star Shift. At the sight of this, Eunuch Li subconsciously thought of Gus's Murong clan's technique of giving someone a taste of their own medicine. However, as soon as the thought flashed through his mind, it disappeared without a trace. First of all, Fang Qingshan's surname was not Murong, so he basically did not know how to use this martial art. Then, as Eunuch Li caught the rotating silver needle, his body trembled, his arms trembled, and his feet sank 3 feet into the ground. This was because not only did this silver needle return the inner force he had shot out, there was also a completely different, but equally domineering pure force. This was the power of the dragon and elephant that came with the dragon-elephant prajna art that Fang Qingshan cultivated. Although he had only reached the 5th level and had yet to reach the stage where he could break all techniques with brute force, Eunuch Li, who was unprepared and unaware, almost suffered a great loss. Take advantage of his weakness and kill him. After Fang Qingshan returned the silver needle, he advanced instead of retreating. He lifted his hand and slashed at the top of Eunuch Li's head, as if a pagoda was suppressing a river demon. Boundless inner force surged out of Fang Qingshan's body like a flash flood. Coupled with the power of the dragon and elephant, the moment he attacked, it was as if Mount Tai was pressing down, and the sound of thunder could be heard. When Eunuch Li, who had just suffered a loss, saw this, he shook his shoulders and fled like a beam of light. At that moment, only an afterimage remained where he was. Kill! His palm missed. Before Fang Qingshan could do anything else, Eunuch Li appeared in front of Fang Qingshan at lightning speed. Swoosh! 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 One by one, the silver needles pierced towards Fang Qingshan's vital points at the speed of lightning. For a moment, it was as if hundreds of ghosts were walking in the night. Fang Qingshan seemed to be besieged by more than 10 people. There were figures everywhere. Silver needles fell like a cow's hair, enveloping Fang Qingshan's body. What a fast speed! Although Fang Qingshan had cultivated the carefree sex, or even the world's top qigong, wave-like subtle steps, in terms of speed, he had to admit defeat when compared to Eunuch Li's state. Without thinking too much, Fang Qingshan waved his hands and used Tai Chi Fist. Arcs, circles, and waves of inner force formed whirlpools around Fang Qingshan, striking after striking, dealing with changes by remaining unchanged. Ding! 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 The embroidery needles that shot over crashed into the defensive circle formed by Fang Qingshan's inner force, but they produced a series of sounds of fine iron colliding. Traction, shifting, borrowing force, yin and yang conversion. The embroidery needles that were as fast as lightning fell into the whirlpool. Some were directly reflected back, some were distorted by the force, becoming bent, and some even softened or froze directly. Sister, will Big Brother be okay? Fang Shu couldn't see the changes on the field at all, but he knew that Eunuch Li was very powerful. Uncle Ouyang was seriously injured by him at the beginning, and then as soon as he saw Fang Shu, he told him to escape, but Fang Shu displayed the demon disintegration technique. Don't worry, your big brother is very powerful. That eunuch is not his opponent at all. Abai was very confident in Fang Qingshan and said confidently to Fang Shu. At the same time, with the battle between Fang Qingshan and Eunuch Li, more and more people were attracted over. After all, Eunuch Li represents the Imperial Court's Imperial City Department, and he is also trying to catch the son of the Jiangnan rebel, Fang La. And Fang Qingshan is not unknown. When he was in the virtuous gathering manner, he became famous after his battle with Xiao Feng. The battle between the two of them, regardless of victory or defeat, attracted everyone's attention. Even the Shaolin Temple Xian Ci and the others couldn't sit still. After all, they were the hosts. They couldn't care less about the original purpose of the heroes' assembly. A group of Xian generation eminent monks rushed over with a group of martial monks. Since the Shaolin Temple's monks have come, other people who like to watch the fun will naturally not let go of this opportunity. For a time, the Dali Duan clan, Murong family, various sects, even Xiao Feng, Murong Bo, Xiao Yuanshan, and the others who were hiding in the crowd were also hiding in the crowd, watching the battle between the two with a solemn expression. Except for Xiao Feng, Xiao Yuanshan, Murong Bo, and a few others, including the Shaolin Temple's monks, no one was an opponent at all. For a time, everyone couldn't help but look very solemn. In particular, the Shaolin Temple's monks are now faintly regretting. The reason why they held the Heroes' Assembly, in addition to seeking justice for the dead Xian generation eminent monk, was to establish the prestige of Shaolin Temple in the Jianghu. It's just that the development of things seems to be somewhat unexpected. First, there was someone secretly adding fuel to the fire, and now there is the Imperial City Department and Fang Qingshan stirring things up. Xian Ci and the others faintly feel that things are beginning to get out of their control. Although Fang Qingshan's dragon elephant prajna art and internal energy protection were formidable, the sunflower treasured book's silver needles were most proficient in breaking the surface with a single point. Fang Qingshan did not dare to lower his guard. Moreover, with his speed, he wouldn't be able to catch up even if he chased after them. Instead, he would fall into their rhythm, and at that time, it would be too late for regrets. What about Fang Qingshan? He used the strength of the dragon elephant, which was even more vigorous than Eunuch Li's internal energy, to activate the Taiji, to operate the universe. It could really be said that he had his feet on the ground and was innately undefeatable. If it wasn't for Eunuch Li not being overly entangled with him, he would have easily been able to find an opening and strike. After all, although the Taiji fist couldn't predict the enemy's movements, it could be used to gain the upper hand. The heaven and earth great shift could even create an opening in the opponent. However, other than Xiao Yuanshan, Xiao Feng, Murong Bo, and Duan Yu, there were very few people who could clearly see the situation of the two of them fighting. In the eyes of the bystanders, one figure was like the blue waves of the ocean, unceasingly surging, while the other was like a towering wall, unmoving like a mountain, raging waves beating against the shore. The aftermath of the swift and fierce confrontation was like 1,000 piles of snow. It caused the trees in all directions to tremble, leaves fluttering in the air, and traces of collision instantly covered the area. Other than a limited number of people, the surrounding spectators retreated again and again. If this continues, I'm afraid that the final outcome will be a draw. Murong Bo narrowed his eyes as he inwardly speculated. As for why it wasn't a fight between the sandpiper and the clam, it was because it was said before that Fang Qingshan's defense was unparalleled, and Eunuch Li couldn't break through his defense. Eunuch Li's speed was too fast, and if he wanted to leave, Fang Qingshan definitely wouldn't be able to catch up. Should I get involved? Looking at the scene that seemed intense, as if victory and defeat could be decided at any moment, but it was actually a contest between spear and shield, and no one could do anything to the other. Murong Bo couldn't help but have some thoughts in his heart. Speaking of Murong Bo, this fellow was simply a shit-stirrer. In order to restore his country, he would stop at nothing. That year of the Yinmen Pass, it was he who instigated Xin Xiai to gather a group of people to kill Xiao Feng and his son, wanting to incite a war between the Khitans and the great Song Empire, so that he could reap the benefits. Unfortunately, the heavens didn't go according to his wishes, and in the end, nothing came of it. This thief didn't give up, so he simply faked his death to escape. From the light to the dark, for decades, he fanned the flames everywhere, as if he wanted the world to be in chaos. Unfortunately, if he wanted to restore his country, it was far from enough to rely on the tricks of some villains. How could an unconventional sword compare to a torrential momentum? He didn't think about accumulating food, dug deep into the wall, and slowly became a king. Instead, he ran around with a little bit of cleverness, but in the end, it was all for naught, and he worked hard for a lifetime in vain. At this moment, he found another heaven-sent opportunity. Zhang Hu and the imperial court generally minded their own business. Now, as a high-level official of the Imperial City Department, if Eunuch Li died in the heroes' assembly held by the Shaolin Temple today, it could be foreseen that the imperial court and Zhang Hu would immediately welcome a bloody storm. After all, there was a rebel king's son involved. Whether it was for the overall situation or face, the imperial court had to take action to settle the score. Accustomed to Zhang Hu, they didn't fear the worst of the imperial court. Once the imperial court attacked Zhang Hu, it would certainly cause a chain reaction. At that time, pulling one hair would affect the whole body, and the whole great song would be in turmoil. At this time, it was the best time for Murong family to fish in troubled waters. Thinking of this, Murong Bo's eyes couldn't help but shine, and he was overwhelmed with emotions. Looking at Eunuch Li, he seemed to see the hope of restoring his country. How many years had it been? He had been running all over the place, working hard for the great cause of the Murong family for half of his life, but he had achieved nothing. Every time he had failed at the last step. Today he had finally seen hope. The heavens had not let him down. However, this matter had to be considered in the long run. To be honest, if it wasn't for Fang Qingshan blocking in front of him, Murong Bo really didn't dare to plot against Eunuch Li. Eunuch Li's speed was too fast, and his martial arts were too high. Murong Bo had cultivated for decades, and although he didn't dare to say that he was the best in Jianghu, he was still very confident in his own martial arts. However, compared to Eunuch Li, he was really inferior. If he couldn't beat Eunuch Li, it would be fine, but the key was that even if he couldn't beat Eunuch Lee, he wouldn't be able to escape. Therefore, although Murong Bo saw a glimmer of hope, he had to plan carefully before making his move. Otherwise, if he let Eunuch Lee escape, not only would his plan fall short of success, he wouldn't be able to endure the following retaliation. Once he was targeted by Eunuch Lee, it would be hard for him to escape. Chapter 66. At this moment, apart from Murong Bo, there was another person who had the same idea as him. This person was his archenemy, Xiao Yuanshan. Xiao Yuanshan was also a promising young man in the past. Who would have thought that while he was sitting at home, disaster would fall from the sky? He had just brought his wife to the Central Plains to visit his relatives, but he did not expect to be ambushed and attacked by a group of Central Plains martial arts experts. As a result, a beautiful family was instantly broken into pieces, and the family was ruined. And all of this was because of a baseless rumor made by Murong Bo. He was originally a member of the Khitan imperial family, the head of the personal army of Empress Xiao of Liao. He was highly appreciated by Empress Xiao, and because he had been practicing martial arts with the Han Shaolin Temple master since he was young, he had some feelings for the Song dynasty. Therefore, he worked hard to build a good relationship with the Song dynasty and Liao dynasty, and often dissuaded the Liao Daoist sect from using military force. However, what did he get for his painstaking efforts? A mere rumor had destroyed his family. My heart was set on the bright moon, but the bright moon shines on the ditch. Xiao Yuanshan, who did not die after jumping off the cliff, decided to take revenge. Therefore, he and Murong Bo, who had faked his death to escape, once again had the same idea. They hid in the Shaolin Temple, found out the situation of the Buddhist scripture pavilion, and often sneaked into the pavilion to copy martial arts manuals. At the same time, they secretly investigated what happened in the past. Some time ago, Qiao Feng became a rat on the street overnight from the beggar sect leader, and everyone wanted to beat him up. In fact, it was not unjust, because the son had to pay back his father's debt. All of this was part of Xiao Yuanshan's plan. But when they traced back to the old incident in the Yinmen Pass, who was right and who was wrong, no one could say clearly. They could only use a Buddhist saying, "Revenge breeds revenge. When will the butcher's knife stop?" And at this moment, he and Murong Bo saw a glimmer of hope. Of course, Murong Bo wanted to stir up a pool of spring water, fish in troubled waters, and add bricks and tiles to his plan of reviving the Great Yin. But Xiao Yuanshan's goal was very simple. As long as the world was in chaos, he would be happy. If he could conveniently get rid of those enemies one by one, or even ruin their reputation, that would be even better. Therefore, both of them really thought the same. But like Murong Bo, Xiao Yuanshan didn't dare to act rashly. Years ago, at the Yinmen Pass, he was one of the few martial art masters in the world. Shaolin monk Xian Ci led a group of brothers to ambush him. But Xiao Yuanshan single-handedly defeated monk Xian Ci, the Beggar Clan's clan leader Swordbeard Wang Jiantong, and also killed the 10,000 victorious saber Wang Wei, the Yellow Mountains priest He Yun, the Shaanxi Datong Prefecture's Iron Tower Fang Daxiong, the Jiangxi Du family's 3 heroes, and a total of 17 other Wulin masters. If it wasn't for the fact that Xian Ci and the others saw that their chances of winning were slim and had no choice but to kill his wife and break his mental defenses, causing him to commit suicide by jumping off the cliff, the final outcome would probably be very different. Back then, Xiao Yuanshan was already so powerful. 20 years later, he lived in seclusion in Shaolin. One could only imagine how high his martial arts were. However, even with his martial arts, which were almost at the top of the Jianghu, he still shuddered at Eunuch Lee's speed. Although he had already disregarded life and death, if he didn't see his revenge, he wouldn't be able to die in peace. Therefore, he was the same as Murong Bo, calculating the timing of his attack in order to kill in one strike. Otherwise, not only would he not be able to achieve the desired result, it would also bring him endless trouble. Damn it, it can't go on like this. Although Eunuch Lee couldn't predict that Murong Bo and Xiao Yuanshan were going to secretly kill him and make him stay in Shaolin forever, he also gradually felt that something was wrong. Although the sunflower-treasured book was powerful and could be said to be the culmination of the unconventional martial arts, the more powerful the martial arts, the more energy it would take to use it. He originally thought that although Fang Qingshan's defense was powerful, he would definitely lose if he defended for a long time. As long as he was able to find a slight flaw, he would be able to strike like a thunderbolt, and naturally, he would be able to win the battle. However, the idea was beautiful, but the reality was somewhat helpless. After attacking for so long and exhausting a few layers of his inner force, Fang Qingshan was still like an unseen abyss. No matter how sharp his attack was, it was simply like a clay ox entering the sea, completely ineffective. Instead, he had to be careful of Fang Qingshan. After all, his Taiji fist was not only purely for defense, it was also for attacking after striking. There were no flaws, and it also created flaws for his opponent. If he wasn't careful, he would be in danger of falling into the trap. Forget it, if we continue to fight, I'm afraid that in the end, the one who will lose face will be me. Thinking about this, Uniquely couldn't help but want to retreat. However, if he were to retreat like this, Uniquely was somewhat unwilling. He thought about how the Manichaeism sect's leader, Feng La, who was known as the king of Jiangnan, was defeated by him in the end, and now, an unknown brat made him feel helpless. If this were to spread, wouldn't he become a laughingstock? Therefore, he decided to use his ultimate move, just like Xiao Feng's 18 dragon subduing palms stacked together to determine the outcome of the battle. As for whether he could break it or not, it didn't matter. If he could break it, it would naturally be good, eliminating the potential danger and capturing the enemy. If he couldn't break it, it didn't matter, as he had tried his best. When he left, no one could say anything when he returned. Borne toward the sun, sunflower needle. At a certain moment, Uniquely suddenly stopped and stood not far from Fang Qingshan with a solemn expression. Other people with low cultivation might not be able to see it, but they felt that the atmosphere suddenly became oppressive and a little confused. However, Fang Qingshan knew that this was the rhythm of an ultimate move, so he didn't dare to be negligent. Dragon Elephant Prajna Art, Taiji Fist, Heaven and Earth Great Shift, and all the inner force in his body were mobilized together. Even a lion would use all its strength to catch a rabbit, let alone facing Eunuch Li's ultimate move. Just as he was ready, his vision blurred, and then he saw an embroidery needle that was neither gold nor copper, neither iron nor steel, shining with fluorescent light, as warm as jade, as thick as an eyebrow, and about 5 to 6 times the length of an embroidery needle had already arrived between his eyebrows. Fast, very fast. It was as if it wasn't just speed, but it had also cut through space. It arrived in front of him almost in a flash. Not only was it fast, but in Fang Qingshan's eyes, the small embroidery needle was like the sun, filled with the supreme power of extreme yang. Freeze! Fang Qingshan's eyes suddenly burst out with unprecedented light. Crisis. This was the first time he faced a life-and-death crisis after coming to the Sky Dragon realm. At this juncture, Fang Qingshan had never been so calm. There was great horror between life and death. In the past, the dragon elephant in his mind was like a dead object. At this moment, it seemed to have been stimulated, and there was a trace of intelligence in it. As Fang Qingshan shouted, the dragon elephant trembled. An invisible force suddenly appeared 3 feet around him, locking the void. The embroidery needle, which was originally as fast as lightning, trembled, and its speed plummeted. Although its speed had decreased, the tip of the needle was about to touch his eyebrows. The power that was like a volcano that was about to erupt made Fang Qingshan's heart throb. Chapter 67. Although there was the all-heaven chessboard in his mud-pill palace, Fang Qingshan should be able to sit back and relax. However, this was not the case. Not to mention that the all-heaven chessboard had not been fully nurtured, and he still needed to constantly collect luck. Every time he moved it, it would consume a huge amount of resources. Moreover, using the all-heaven chessboard to deal with him was like using a cannon to kill a mosquito. Whenever he encountered danger, he would think of relying on the all-heaven chessboard. Whenever he encountered danger, he would think that he would be fine. Once he developed this mentality, Fang Qingshan would not live for long. Although the all-heaven chessboard was powerful, it was a dead object after all. Although it was a precious treasure, the world was so big that there were all kinds of strange things. When Fang Qingshan developed the habit of relying on the all-heaven chessboard for everything, once there was a day when he could not solve something, it would be the time of his death. Success or failure was due to the same person. If one relied on a mountain, the mountain would fall. If one relied on water, the water would flow. If one relied on people, they would walk. Everything else could not be relied on. The only thing that could be relied on was one's own strength. Therefore, Fang Qingshan would never use the all-heaven chessboard unless it was a last resort or he really had no chance of survival. The all-heaven chessboard was a comprehensive treasure that could attack, defend, and assist. However, Fang Qingshan subconsciously blocked its defense and attack functions, leaving only the auxiliary function of connecting to the heavens. He did not want to rely too much on the all-heaven chessboard. Therefore, even when he encountered Eunuch Li's full blow at this moment, he did not think of the all-heaven chessboard. Instead, he highly concentrated his essence, qi, and spirit, mobilizing all the power he could mobilize to deal with it. He opened his mouth and shouted. It was like a sound wave technique or a tantric incantation. It actually triggered the dragon-elephant visualization diagram in his mind and confined a radius of 3 feet around him. Although it was as fast as lightning, it was a pleasant surprise. At the same time, it also gave Fang Qingshan a chance. At the moment when the embroidery needle paused, Fang Qingshan's shoulder moved, his feet did not move, and his body did not move. He shot backward out of thin air, distancing himself from the embroidery needle. Eunuch Li could not help but sneer when he saw this. Although he was a little surprised by Fang Qingshan's previous shout, it would be a joke if his all-out attack was so easily broken. Sure enough, the embroidery needle only paused for a moment. Although its unstoppable momentum was interrupted, it still came with great momentum. Although its speed was not as fast as it was at the beginning, it was still as fast as a rainbow. Ordinary people could not react at all. It was a pity that the first spurt of energy was exhausted. Fang Qingshan was not an ordinary person either. He had already overestimated Eunuch Li's combat power, but he did not expect that the needle just now was still beyond his expectations. He almost failed miserably. Fortunately, he had a buffer and a little distance from the embroidery needle, which was enough for him. Break! This time, Fang Qingshan did not choose to use Taiji Fist to defend. Instead of dodging, he took a step forward and punched out. Offense is the best defense. Of course, Fang Qingshan's attack was not simple either. This punch almost contained all his knowledge and understanding. The dragon-elephant Prajna art was combined with Yang Pass 3, and his fist was covered by a circle of heaven and earth shifting and Taiji force. Bang! A loud noise was earth-shattering. Some people with low cultivation were directly knocked unconscious, and some were bleeding from their 7 orifices. Even Xiao Yuanshan and the others had to retreat because of the aftermath. The embroidery needle first collided with Fang Qingshan's pure Yang Palm force, and there was a sound of metal clashing. Yang Pass 3, as the name suggested, had 3 layers of palm force, like the blue waves of the sea, and each layer was stronger than the one before. However, in the face of the embroidery needle, it was like a piece of paper. It broke with a poke, and it could not intercept the embroidery needle at all. Fortunately, although the palm force of the Tianshan 6 Yang Palm did not intercept the embroidery needle, it was not completely useless. The 3 layers of palm force dissolved part of the embroidery needle's sunflower power. Following that, the embroidery needle fell into the Taiji Fist and heaven and earth great shifts pull, shift, push, counterattack, and so on. It was like a whirlpool, a quagmire. The attack, which was originally 10 points, was divided bit by bit. 1 into 2, 2 into 4, 4 into 8. Even so, in the end, it still could not defend. After a moment of stalemate, it was poked to the end. In the end, only Fang Qingshan's fist was left. The dragon-elephant Prajna art had been cultivated to the 5th level, and ordinary swords could not hurt him at all. Unfortunately, although this embroidery needle was not a divine weapon, it was not ordinary either. In addition, it broke through the surface with the sunflower power. If it was someone else, they would have died on the spot. Fortunately, the embroidery needle had been restrained, palm force, and triple whirlpool, and its 10 layers of power had been eliminated. Although the remaining 4 layers were still domineering, for Fang Qingshan, it was no longer a fatal danger. Chi! The embroidery needle broke through Fang Qingshan's fist and directly entered his arm. The powerful force directly sent Fang Qingshan flying, and the scorching sunflower internal force spread along his arm to his whole body. Fang Qingshan first used the dark north qi to devour the sunflower vital energy. Although the sunflower vital energy was domineering, the dark north qi was even sharper. When the two tigers fought, the sunflower vital energy was a rootless source. Naturally, it could not compare to the dark north qi. In the end, it could only be devoured and digested bit by bit. Then, Fang Qingshan used his internal force and the dragon elephant power to force the embroidery needle out of his arm bit by bit. Only then did he let out a long sigh of relief. Although he could not use this arm for a while, he did not suffer much damage in the end. Raising his head and looking at Eunuch Li, Fang Qingshan's eyes were filled with a fierce glint. He had been in the Sky Dragon sect for about 2 years, and this was the first time he had suffered such a big loss. Seeing that Fang Qingshan had recovered so quickly and did not seem to have suffered much damage, Eunuch Li's expression immediately turned ugly. Fang Qingshan was injured. Although it might not be as serious as he had imagined, it was reasonable to say that he should be very happy. But things didn't look that way. Although he had injured Fang Qingshan with a thunderous strike, the sunflower needle wasn't something that could be casually used. So, in fact, he didn't have much of an advantage. Seeing Fang Qingshan looking at him with a fierce gaze, Eunuch Li snorted coldly. He knew that this was the only way today. However, although Fang Qingshan could not deal with it, he did not forget the main purpose of coming this time. Eunuch Li glanced at Fang Qingshan and let out a strange laugh. Before Fang Qingshan could make a move, Eunuch Li's body swayed and pounced towards Fang Qingshan like a ghost. Ah, there's a path to heaven, but you chose to come to hell. Fang Qingshan was about to make a move, but when he saw Eunuch Li's action, he suddenly chuckled. Not only was he not worried, but the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a hint of gloating. Chapter 68. Swoosh! Sure enough, seeing that Eunuch Li was about to grab Fang Shu, whether it was Fang Shu himself or Ah Zhu and Ah Bai who were standing next to him, there was not the slightest worry. Their calm expressions made Eunuch Li's heart skip a beat. The arrow was knocked and had to be released. Although he didn't know why they were so calm, Eunuch Li didn't have time to think so much. Because Fang Qingshan was beside him and there were many martial arts masters around. In order to prevent any accidents, Eunuch Li clasped Fang Shu's shoulder like an eagle's claw and was about to take him away from this troublesome place. At this moment, Eunuch Li's heart suddenly palpitated, and he heard a piercing sound. Beside him, Duan Yu, who was a useless scholar, suddenly stretched out his finger and pointed at him from afar. In an instant, a sharp and thick sword aura lingered at his fingertips. Then, with lightning speed, it shot towards Eunuch Li like it was chasing after the stars and moon. Fast, very fast, too fast to react. He had been hunting geese all day long, but today, he was pecked in the eye by the geese. In the past, Eunuch Li relied on his unbreakable speed, and many martial arts masters didn't even have a chance to escape from him. Now, he finally suffered the consequences of his own actions. It was too close, and he was caught off guard. Who knew that Duan Yu, who looked harmless, was actually a top expert? Of course, the most important thing was that the six-pulse divine sword was especially sharp. Of course, this didn't mean that the six-pulse divine sword was better than other martial arts, but the effect of its attack was more obvious. For example, although Qiao Feng's Taizu's long fist was very powerful, it couldn't compare to the 18 dragon subduing palms. It was the same for Duan Yu. Although he hadn't reached the realm of Fang Qingshan and Eunuch Li, because of the output of the six-pulse divine sword, this attack might not be inferior to theirs. Eunuch Li, who was unprepared, naturally failed miserably. Bam! Duan Yu's swift and fierce attack caught Eunuch Li off guard. Coupled with the sunflower needle, the exhausted Eunuch Li was naturally unable to defend himself and was directly struck by Duan Yu's finger. Although Eunuch Li did not react in time, the inner force of the sunflower automatically protected its master. Unfortunately, the six-pulse divine sword was too sharp. Although it couldn't compare to the needle he used to attack Fang Qingshan, it had the same effect as the sunflower treasure manual. Both of them used a single point to break through the surface, and would often break through the protection of inner force. As such, even though they were in a stalemate for a moment, they were still unsurprisingly struck by the finger. However, the inner force protecting his body gave Eunuch Li some buffer time, allowing him to avoid being hit in his vitals. The six-pulse divine sword pierced through his chest, but it did not cause any fatal damage. What a pity! Seeing this scene, Fang Qingshan could not help but sigh. It was such a good opportunity, but he didn't grasp it. However, he did not take it to heart. At Eunuch Li's level, unless it was a fight between experts of the same level, it would not be easy to cause fatal damage to him. However, Eunuch Li was injured by the six-pulse divine sword, and his injury was even more severe than Fang Ping's. The two of them were evenly matched. This time, although it was a little dangerous, Fang Shu was protected, and Fang Ping's goal was achieved. He had also seen the Sunflower Treasure Manual and exchanged blows with an expert like Eunuch Li. He had also benefited a lot, and this trip was not in vain. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, everything happened so suddenly that the onlookers could barely react. First, Fang Qingshan was sent flying by Eunuch Li's sudden attack. Then, Eunuch Li wanted to capture Fang Shu, but he was also sent flying by the harmless Duan Yu. The onlookers could not help but be dazzled. Yu has completely mastered the six-pulse divine sword? Duan Zhengchun and the others from the Duan family of Dali were very happy to see this scene. In the past, the Duan family of Dali was not only the royal family of Dali, but also the #1 martial arts family in Tianan. They were famous throughout the world, and everyone would give them some face. However, ever since Jiumaji broke into the Sky Dragon Temple and fought against many people, suppressing the monks of Dali to the point that they could not raise their heads, and even abducting the crown prince, Duan Yu, they felt that there was always someone better than them. Moreover, when Wu Xingyun broke into the palace, he calmly defeated the crowd under the siege of many experts and even the army, and snatched the One Sun finger, giving them a slap in the face. All of this made the Duan family of Dali desperate for a top expert to appear. The six-pulse divine sword was a peerless divine skill created by their ancestor, Duan Siping, with the One Sun finger in the first level. They believed that as long as they mastered the six-pulse divine sword, they could go anywhere in the world. Therefore, when they saw Duan Yu use the six-pulse divine sword and use it as if it were light, even though it was a sneak attack, how could Duan Jingshun and the others not be happy when they saw Eunuch Li, an expert who was probably not much weaker than Wu Xingyun? Opportunity! Just when Duan Jingshun was inwardly rejoicing that a peak expert had finally appeared in the Duan clan, Murong Bo and Xiao Yuanshan, who had been hiding in the dark like a poisonous snake, were also surprised that Duan Yu was also a peak expert. However, they were more concerned about Eunuch Li being heavily injured by Duan Yu, which made them see a great opportunity. Xiao! Coincidentally, almost at the same time, two black shadows rose from the crowd. When Eunuch Li was hit by the six-pulse divine sword and was sent flying, they rushed towards Eunuch Li, greater teleportation movement technique, crossing the river on a reed. At the same time, everyone from the Shaolin Temple exclaimed almost at the same time, because the two black shadows were using the crossing the river on a reed and greater teleportation movement technique of the 72 sects of Shaolin. Pursuing Shadow Kick, 2 Scatterpalm. But before they could recover from the shock of the two movement techniques, Murong Bo and Xiao Yuanshan Each used one of the 72 sects of Shaolin Temple. What Murongbo used was the pursuing shadow kick. With a movement of his feet, a blurry black shadow fell down like lightning, like a steel whip being brandished. After the first kick was sent out, the second kick followed closely like a shadow. Following that, the second kick turned into a shadow, and the third kick followed closely like a shadow. It was really like a shadow following the body fast. If the pursuing shadow kick was fast, then Xiao Yuanshan's was ferocious. Before his palm energy arrived, Eunuch Lee already felt that it was hard for him to breathe. In an instant, the palm energy surged like a raging tide. The so-called two-scatter palm meant that when it hit a rock, the rock fragments would scatter in all directions. When it hit a person, the soul would scatter. This palm technique only had one move. Because the palm energy was too powerful, there was no need to use a second move when facing the enemy, and the enemy would already be dead. Furthermore, this palm technique had such an overwhelming amount of inner energy as its foundation. If one wanted to change the move, it was not something that a human could do. Although this martial art could not compare to the number one ferocious Vajra palm, it purely relied on inner energy. The thicker the inner energy, the more powerful the palm technique would be. Chapter 69. Shaolin, you deserve to die. Eunuch Lee had been very confident when he'd come to Shaolin to capture the traitor's son, Fang Shu. Although this was the Shaolin Temple, and although many experts from all over the world had gathered here, according to the intelligence of the Imperial City Department, there were almost no top experts like Xiao Yuanshan, let alone those who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. With his martial arts, where couldn't he go in this big world? At first, it was exactly as he'd expected. The beggar sect, which was as famous as Shaolin and claimed to be the number one sect in the world, couldn't live up to its reputation. Without Xiao Feng, although the elders Chuan Gong, Zhang Bo, and law enforcement were good, they were not enough for him. However, at this moment, an unknown young expert who was even more powerful than the famous North Xiao Feng and South Murong had jumped out. Even he himself had to be careful when dealing with him. But that was not all. Then a harmless Duan Yu appeared and injured him unexpectedly. Eunuch Lee knew that this was the end of the day. So, he prepared to leave. However, plans couldn't keep up with changes. He wanted to leave, but someone didn't want him to. According to the intelligence of the Imperial City Department, there were almost no top experts at the Shaolin Heroes Conference. But at this moment, Eunuch Lee wanted to eat their flesh and skin. Not to mention Fang Qingshan, who was on par with him. There was Duan Yu, and now there were two more. Eunuch Lee's heart immediately sank. Compared to Eunuch Lee's anger, the Shaolin monks wanted to cry, but had no tears. The appearance of a top expert from the Imperial City Department and the son of Fang La, the traitor of Jiangnan, had already caused a storm. However, they thought that as long as the Imperial City Department captured the traitor, it would be fine. Although this might cause Shaolin to lose some face, it was better than provoking the Imperial Court. Although many people in Jianghu believed in the spring and autumn period assassins, saying that when an ordinary man got angry, blood would be spilled 5 steps away, it was different for these big sects with foundations. They had already reached a tacit agreement with the Imperial Court to mind their own business. After all, ordinary people could escape thousands of miles after one attack. Even if they issued a wanted notice, it was still unknown if it would be of any use. However, it was different for these sects with foundations. They could run, but they couldn't run. When the army arrived, the peak experts could only escape alone. They couldn't turn the tide. Unfortunately, the tree longed for peace, but the wind would not stop. They wanted to keep the peace, but the situation was far beyond their expectations. In the beginning, there was Fang Qingshan, then Duan Yu appeared, and now Murongbo and Xiao Yuanshan appeared. Especially Murongbo and Xiao Yuanshan. Not only did they want to make Eunuch Lee stay, more importantly, they actually used Shaolin's 72 ultimate skills. However, they really didn't know when the Shaolin Temple had 2 more top experts. But if you say that they are not from the Shaolin Temple, obviously others will not believe it. It was just like before. Many people in the world of martial artists had died because of their unique ultimate techniques, and the crowd immediately thought of Gusu's Murong clan saying, "An eye for an eye." Now that Murong Bo and Xiao Yuanshan used Shaolin ultimate skills, they were naturally regarded as Shaolin experts. In particular, the two of them were dressed in black and masked, which made them even more conspicuous. Xin Ci and the others were unable to defend themselves even if they had 100 mouths to say. They were really suffering in silence. "I'm not from the Shaolin Temple. Don't slander me." Just as Eunuch Li's voice fell, Murong Bo spoke. "The imperial court and the Jianghu have always minded their own business. Today, we are holding a heroes' assembly here, and the people of your imperial city department actually swaggered over to arrest people. They simply don't put all of us in their eyes. Yes, one step back, one step back. Today may be a misunderstanding, but who knows if it's a test? Once we get an inch, won't the entire martial arts world be under the jurisdiction of the imperial court?" Xiao Yuanshan also echoed. His words confirmed Eunuch Li's thoughts. He secretly cursed in his heart. After he went back to recuperate, he would definitely report to the imperial court and ask them to send an army to eradicate the Shaolin Temple. Xiao Yuanshan and Murong Bo were both experts in the Jianghu back then, and they had trained in the Shaolin Temple for dozens of years. Not only their martial arts, but their ultimate techniques had also reached the peak. Although there were still hidden dangers in terms of combat ability, other than Fang Qingshan and old monsters like Wu Yazi, there were very few who could be on par with them. At this moment, the two of them had the same goal. They only wished for the world to be in chaos, so they attacked mercilessly. The sky was filled with shadows of legs that were like steel whips, exploding the air. Not only were they fast, but they were also fierce. And Xiao Yuanshan's palm power was even more powerful and fierce. With a slap, it could split mountains and split rocks. Its power was not inferior to following Shadow retreating. While he was weak, take his life. They knew Eunuch Li's cultivation and speed, so they couldn't give him a chance to catch his breath. Otherwise, all their efforts would be wasted. "Eunuch Li, we're here to help you." At this moment, the eunuchs that came with Eunuch Li finally reacted. Seeing their boss being surrounded, they all wanted to rush over to the battlefield. Damn it. Looking at the eunuchs that were rushing over, Murong Bo and Xiao Yuanshan's expressions instantly changed. Although the martial arts of these eunuchs were not bad, and they were not inferior to ordinary Jianghu experts, they were still nothing in the two of them's eyes. Normally, this kind of trash could be killed with a single slap, and it would be completely effortless. But at this moment, if they were to disturb the situation and give Eunuch Li a chance to catch his breath, then their plan would all be wasted. They would also have to provoke such a terrifying expert. At that time, they would not be able to eat or sleep in peace. Die! Towards the eunuchs that ruined their plan, Xiao Yuanshan and Murong Bo were extremely furious. They did not show any mercy, and with a single slap, the eunuchs that were rushing over flew back at an even faster speed. They landed on the ground without a sound, and without even a struggle, they died. Good. I'll remember all of you. But in the end, Eunuch Li had won a chance to catch his breath. The resentful light in his eyes swept past Fang Qingshan, Duan Yu, Xiao Yuanshan, Murong Bo, and even the Shaolin monk, and then he shot out 2 needles to push Xiao Yuanshan and Murong Bo back. Without the slightest hesitation, he turned around and transformed into a phantom that dashed down the mountain. Damn it! Stop him! Releasing a tiger back into the mountains will cause endless troubles in the future. Xiao Yuanshan and Murong Bo couldn't help but shout out anxiously when they saw Eunuch Li turn around and flee. But all the Jianghu people that obstructed Eunuch Li's path, not to mention attacking, even their figures were a blur, let alone stopping him. Go back! Right at this moment, a handsome young master pointed at Eunuch Li from afar, and a force from his finger shot towards Eunuch Li like a thunderbolt. Chapter 70. The finger force was gray and indistinct, but there were faint specks of starlight flickering within it. It was very mysterious. However, Eunuch Lee did not dare to underestimate it. First once bitten, twice shy. First, Duan Yu's six-pulse divine sword had made him suffer. Now, even though this finger force could not compare to the six-pulse divine sword, it was still exquisite and sharp. It was not inferior to his normal attacks. Of course, if it were any other day, he would be able to break through it easily. However, the problem was that he was heavily injured and Xiao Yuanshan and the other two experts were chasing after him. He could not help but slow down, and he was surrounded by three people. "Sir, who are you?" Eunuch Lee looked at the young man in front of him with a gloomy expression. He felt like he was going to die. First, there was Fong Qingshan, then there was Duan Yu, and now there was another one. Did the world belong to the youngsters now? "I am Gus's Murong Fu." Murong Fu said calmly as he stood where he was and smiled. As for the finger technique he used just now, it was Gus's Murong family's ultimate technique, joint finger technique. Even though it could not compare to the six-pulse divine sword, it was still a top-notch ultimate technique. It was even better than sun finger and flower pinching finger. Just like Murong Bo, Murong Fu was born with the heavy burden of reviving his country. However, compared to Murong Bo, be it in terms of martial arts or intelligence, Murong Fu was slightly inferior. At least Murong Bo could seize the chance to stir up trouble. No matter if he was good or evil, whether he succeeded or failed, he would always work hard. As for Murong Fu, aside from using his family's reputation to create a name that did not live up to its name, Southern Murong, there was nothing else he could do. When Murong Bo saw Fong Qingshan and Eunuch Lee fight, he immediately had a plan. As for Murong Fu, he stood at the side. Even though he was not indifferent, he was very indecisive. He did not have the intelligence to make a decision immediately. The reason why he attacked in the end was because of Murong Bo's secret reminder. Good. Eunuch Lee was so angry that he laughed. "Shaolin and Gus's Murong family. I'd like to see whether or not you can make me stay today." The moment he finished speaking, a handful of steel needles shot toward the three of them like a torrential storm. "Young master, are you all right?" Not to mention the battle on the field. A Zhu and a Bai were a little worried about young Master Murong. After all, Eunuch Lee was the person who even injured Fong Qingshan. Although he was unexpectedly injured by young Master Duan, a starving camel was bigger than a horse. However, they knew that it was useless to worry about him. On the other hand, Fong Qingshan was injured by Eunuch Lee. He didn't know how his injury was. A Bai quickly took out various elixirs and wanted to let Fong Qingshan take them. "I'm fine." Fong Qingshan did not suffer much damage. The defense of Dragon Elephant Prajna art was amazing, and the internal strength of Dark North was equally overbearing. Except for one arm that could not move easily, there was no other damage. "Young master, do you want to help them and take down the eunuch who injured you?" Seeing that Fong Qingshan did not suffer much damage, a Zhu and a Bai couldn't help but feel relieved and said to Fong Qingshan. Although Murong Bo and the other two were powerful, Eunuch Lee was also not easy to deal with. Although he was injured, he seemed to be at ease under the siege of the three at the moment. A Zhu and a Bai were worried about their young master, so they wanted Fong Qingshan to help Murong Fu. Before Fong Qingshan could say anything, he saw a group of people excitedly coming over. It was Duan Zhengchun and his party. Father, I didn't expect you to really master this six-pulse divine sword. Our Dali's Duan family finally has a top expert." Duan Zhengchun looked at Duan Yu with a gratified expression. Then his expression changed and he said gloomily, "I think you already knows that someone stole our Dali's Duan family's solitary sun finger. I wonder if you're Eunuch Lee's opponent now?" Hearing this, Duan Yu looked at Fong Qingshan awkwardly, then hurriedly shook his head and said, "Although I caught him off guard and injured him, I'm far from being his opponent. At most, I'm on par with those two black-clothed men." Hearing this, Duan Zhengchun couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. The woman who snatched the solitary sun finger from him was as powerful as Eunuch Lee. Initially, he thought that since Duan Yu could injure Eunuch Lee, he would be able to defeat his enemy and avenge his humiliation. He did not expect the result to be like this. "Father, let me introduce you." Duan Yu pointed at Fong Qingshan and said, "This young Master Fong is my senior brother. These two are Mrs. Zhu and Abai. They are from Gus's Morong family. Senior brother, this is my father, Dali's Duan family's South subduing king. Young Master Fong's martial arts have reached perfection at such a young age. This Duan is truly ashamed." Hearing Duan Yu's introduction, Duan Jingshun was overjoyed. He didn't think that Duan Yu was actually an expert like Fong Qingshan's senior brother. With such an expert around, it would be a great help in dealing with Wu Xingyun in the future. Thus, he hurriedly flattered him. If he knew that Wu Xingyun was Fong Qingshan and Duan Yu's senior uncle, and that it was Fong Qingshan's idea to steal the solitary sun finger, who knew if he would be dumbfounded? Of course, South's subduing king is overpraising me. Fong Qingshan didn't have a good impression of Duan Jingshun, so he replied indifferently and didn't speak again. Although it was common to have 3 or 4 wives in ancient times, Fong Qingshan looked down on people like him who fooled around everywhere and never took responsibility. If he wasn't Duan Yu's father, he wouldn't even look him in the eye. For a moment, the situation was awkward. Although Duan Jingchuan's followers were indignant, they had seen Fong Qingshan's might, so they could only grit their teeth and swallow it. "Young master," just when Duan Yu was in a dilemma, a Zhu spoke up. Firstly, it was to help Duan Yu out of the predicament, and secondly, it was to remind Fong Qingshan of what he hadn't said before. "Murong Fu won't be in danger. We just have to wait and see." Fong Qingshan shook his head and didn't want to make a move. Currently, the reason why Eunuch Li was able to deal with Murong Bo's group of 3 with ease and didn't act decisively was because Fong Qingshan was still standing at the side. He was somewhat fearful, so he paid some attention to Fong Qingshan. However, if he wanted to leave, he couldn't get rid of Murong Bo's group of 3, so he fell into a deadlock. But shouldn't we leave Eunuch Li behind? He's so powerful, so if he escapes, there will be endless trouble in the future. A Zhu couldn't understand. Leave? It won't be that easy. Fong Qingshan shook his head. With Eunuch Li's cultivation and speed, if they really wanted to leave him behind, even if Fong Qingshan attacked, both sides would suffer. Fong Qingshan didn't want to face Eunuch Li's final counterattack before his death. Besides, the Shaolin Temple's monks have already reacted and are about to make a move. They won't just watch Eunuch Li fall in Shaolin's territory. Chapter 71. Everyone, please stop. Sure enough, as soon as Fong Qingshan's voice fell, the Shaolin Temple's Xian generation, led by Xian Ci, rushed towards Murong Bo and the others. Although the Shaolin monks of this generation were considered experts in Jianghu, not to mention Murong Bo and Xiao Yuanshan, they might not even be able to win against Murong Fu. But at this moment, their momentum was surging. In 2s and 3s, they each used their own techniques: fists, palms, blades, and fingers. All of them were extremely swift and fierce. They whistled out and attacked Murong Bo, Xiao Yuanshan, and Murong Fu, who were in the battle circle with lightning speed. If it was a normal day, not to mention Murong Bo and Xiao Yuanshan, even Murong Fu would not care about these attacks, even if he was besieged by several heads. After all, the revolving star passage technique was the best at group attacks. But at this moment, the 3 of them had no choice but to move away and create some distance. After all, they were not only facing the Shaolin monks, but also Eunuch Li, a top expert. When experts exchanged blows, victory or defeat was decided in an instant. When fighting with an expert like Eunuch Li, once they were distracted, it was no different from seeking their own deaths. Thus, the 3 of them had no choice but to retreat to avoid giving Eunuch Li an opportunity to kill them. Although Eunuch Li had some doubts, seeing that the Shaolin monks did not attack him, he looked at Murong Bo and the others and did not continue to attack. He just stood there and watched the situation. Abbot Xian Ci, what is the meaning of this? Seeing the Dharma Hall, Arhut Hall, Bodhi Hall, Commandment Hall, Tao Testimony Hall, Dragon Tree Hall, Sarara Hall, and the other heads of the courtyards coming out, Murong Fu did not have the cultivation of Murong Bo and Xiao Yuanshan, so he took the lead. Could it be that the reason why the Shaolin Temple is holding the Heroes' Assembly today is because they are secretly colluding with the Imperial City Department to catch us all in one fell swoop? As soon as these words came out, the onlookers immediately went into an uproar. They looked at the Shaolin monks with vigilance in their eyes. Young Master Morong, be careful with your words. Xian Nan's expression sank. Since that's not the case, we're currently in the midst of capturing the Imperial Court's lackeys. Why are you interfering? Morong Fu asked calmly. Previously, when the people from the Imperial City Department showed off their strength, I didn't see Shaolin Temple show up. Now, when we want to take him down, Shaolin Temple shows up. If you don't give us an explanation, I'm afraid that we won't be able to convince everyone. Xian Nan wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Xian Si. Ba. Xian Si chanted the name of Buddha and said unhurriedly, just now, because we acted too fast, we didn't have time to react. As for why we intervened, it's because these two masters used the unique skills of Shaolin Temple. I have to ask, where on earth did you learn the 72 ultimate skills? That's right. The 72 ultimate skills are the secrets of Shaolin Temple. Where did you learn them? Why don't you tell us the truth? It's fine if you stole Shaolin Temple's ultimate technique, but you actually want to use it to stir up trouble? Your intentions are sinister, and you deserve death. Both of you should give us a proper explanation today. Otherwise, even though Shaolin Temple is a quiet place for Buddhists, it will not lack angry Vajras. As soon as Xian Si finished speaking, the other Shaolin Temple presidents also spoke up. At the same time, the Shaolin Temple monks who were scattered on the side also moved. Their yellow monk robes flashed, and their heads were clustered together. With wooden sticks in their hands, they formed a battle formation and surrounded Murong Bo and Duan Yu. Today's drama was really full of twists and turns. Originally, it was a grudge between Shaolin Temple and Murong family. But unexpectedly, Eunuch Li's appearance had drawn out the son of Fong La, the rebel of Jiangnan. Then, Fong Qingshan, a martial arts master who, despite his young age, was joined by Duan Yu, Murong Bo, Xiao Yuanshan, Murong Fu, and the others. Now it was Murong Fu and the other two who besieged Eunuch Li. At first, the crowd thought that it was Shaolin Temple's secret plan. But now, Xian Si and the others personally showed up and exposed Eunuch Li, asking Murong Bo and Xiao Yuanshan about the origin of the 72 ultimate skills. After we capture this eunuch, we will naturally tell his abbotship about the origin of our 72 ultimate skills. Murong Bo and Xiao Yuanshan looked at each other and spoke slowly. Great Master, the most important thing now is to capture this eunuch together. Otherwise, once he escapes, we will all have trouble sleeping and eating in the future. You should know that not everyone has the cultivation of that young master. Once he wants to take revenge, no one will be able to escape. As soon as these words came out, the onlookers, who originally thought that this matter had nothing to do with them, suddenly became restless. It was better to be safe than sorry. Although they didn't make a move, who knew if the eunuch would bear a grudge against them? After all, eunuchs were all twisted people. With such powerful martial arts, if they let the tiger return to the mountain, then once he really wanted to take revenge, they would just be waiting for death. As for whether killing this master of the Imperial City Department would anger the Imperial Court, it was not within their scope of consideration. After all, the law did not punish the masses. If so many people attacked together, the Imperial Court would not expand the scope of the attack. At most, they would just choose a tall one to intimidate. And this place was Shaolin Temple, so it would bear the brunt of the attack. But obviously, the fate of Shaolin Temple was not within their scope of consideration. Looking at the restless Jianghu heroes, the people of Shaolin Temple looked bitter. Just as everyone thought, if Eunuch Li died in Shaolin Temple, the law did not punish the masses. The Imperial Court would not attack the entire Jianghu, but Shaolin Temple would be regarded as the culprit and taken out as a sacrifice. This was obviously something that the monks of Shaolin Temple were unwilling to accept. Young Master, please help us take down this eunuch. Murong Fu's eyes swept over Fong Qingshan, and suddenly his eyes lit up. He saw a Zhu and a Bai. If the roots are not removed when weeds are cut, they will grow again when the spring wind blows. Although you are not afraid, Zhu and Abi are not this person's opponent. Uniquely originally had some of his attention on Fang Qingshan. When he heard that Murong Fu actually encouraged Fang Qingshan to make a move, his heart immediately turned cold. If Fang Qingshan really made a move, he was afraid that he would really be in danger today. For a moment, all eyes were focused on Fang Qingshan. The general trend was that if he made a move, everything would be over. If he did not make a move, things would be troublesome. Young master, Zhu and Abi couldn't help but remind him in a low voice. It was not that they were really afraid of death, but because they received Murong Fu's gaze, telling them to persuade Fang Qingshan to make a move. Young Master Murong is right. If you don't kill the snake, there will be endless troubles in the future. As soon as the voice fell, several figures soared into the sky at the same time. One of them was naturally uniquely, and the others were Murong Bo, Xiao Yuanshan, and the others. They had long been guarding against uniquely escaping. As for the last figure, it was Fang Qingshan. Chapter 72. Originally, Fang Qingshan did not want to make a move so early. The reason was very simple. He was not afraid of Eunuch Li's revenge. Even if he let him go today, it would not matter to Fang Qingshan. Eunuch Li was indeed powerful, but his martial arts had basically reached its limit. If he wanted to go further, it was almost as difficult as ascending to heaven. However, Fang Qingshan was different. He cultivated the heaven and earth great shift and stimulated his own potential. The 6th level of the Dragon Elephant Prajna technique was achieved naturally. Next time he faced him, even if he still could not make him stay, it would not be difficult to defeat him. As for relying on the forces behind him to besiege him, Fang Qingshan was not afraid. After all, he still had Wu Yazi and the other two behind him. If Eunuch Li really dared to plot against him and provoked the 3 of them, there was absolutely no shelter in the world unless he had the protection of the sweeping monk. What's more, Fang Qingshan could stay for at most a year. Once the time was up, even if he broke through to the sweeping monk's power, would he be able to cross the boundary to chase after him? Although Eunuch Li was seriously injured, if he risked his life to drag someone down with him, even Fang Qingshan could not guarantee that he could escape unscathed. The fierce were afraid of the stupid, and the stupid were afraid of the reckless. Fang Qingshan cherished his life. At least, he was not willing to make unnecessary sacrifices, so he did not make a move at the first time. However, at this moment he made a move. As Murong Fu said, he could deal with Eunuch Li's revenge, but Zhu and Bai could not. Of course, the main reason was not this. It was because Fang Qingshan sensed that a person had appeared. Originally, Fang Qingshan did not sense it. However, because everyone was watching and waiting for his decision, he inadvertently sensed an obscure and vast aura. Fang Qingshan was shocked at first, but then he reacted. There were very few people in the world who could hide from him and shock him, and there was only one person in Shaolin. The sweeping monk. Yes, the sweeping monk actually stepped out of the Sutras depository and came here, which surprised Fang Qingshan. In fact, the reason for this was because his fight with Eunuch Li had alarmed him. Although Murong Bo and Xiao Yuanshan were also top-notch experts, and the Shaolin monks of the Xian generation couldn't handle them, by relying on all kinds of formations, even if they were defeated, they wouldn't suffer a crushing defeat. However, experts like Fang Qingshan and Eunuch Li were different. They really had the power to suppress a sect. Although he did not care about worldly affairs, he was still concerned about the survival of Shaolin Temple, especially when Fang Qingshan and Eunuch Li were making so much noise. The sweeping monk had to come and take a look. When Fang Qingshan sensed the appearance of the sweeping monk, his eyes lit up. His biggest purpose in coming to Shaolin Temple this time was actually to deal with this old monk. However, as the saying goes, the sea can accommodate hundreds of rivers. It is big to have tolerance. It is hard to stand 1,000 feet tall. It is hard to have no desires. Unless the Shaolin Temple was on the brink of death, the old monk would not intervene. And this was obviously the opposite of his purpose. Fang Qingshan originally intended to use the saying that a gentleman could be deceived, that is, to use the destruction of Shaolin Temple to force the old monk to intervene. However, the premise of this was that the old monk was really pure and had no anger. Otherwise, it was easy to misfire and completely enrage him. At that time, it would be troublesome. However, now there was a great opportunity in front of him. That was Eunuch Lee. If Eunuch Lee was really kept in Shaolin Temple today, especially when he had revealed his identity as the Imperial City Guard and was hunting down the rebels, which could be regarded as official business, then the Imperial Court, whether for the sake of face or to give an explanation to their subordinates, had to take action. It was just that the law did not punish the masses. If everyone was killed with a stick, it would obviously arouse the people's rebellion and lead to greater contradictions. Therefore, the final result was likely to be that Shaolin Temple was killed as a warning to others. At that time, facing the siege of the army, even if the sweeping monk was not afraid, what about the other monks? Of course, he could also show off his ability to take the head of a general in the midst of an army to intimidate the Imperial Court. However, the Imperial Court had already reached its limit when heroes broke the law with martial arts. If another existence that could threaten the ruler appeared, even if Shaolin Temple could be protected for a while, it could not be protected forever. Therefore, Eunuch Lee must not be harmed in Shaolin Temple today. The moment Fang Qingshan made his move, it was obvious that this variable had become even more troublesome. Pulling one hair would cause a chain reaction. His attack was like a fuse. Once it was ignited, if Shaolin Temple took action, they would definitely become the enemy of all the heroes in the world. The clean reputation that they had painstakingly built up would be destroyed. Moreover, it would be fine if he saved Eunuch Lee, but if he didn't, it would not be worth it. Looking at Murong Fu, Murong Bo, and Xiao Yuanshan, who forced Eunuch Lee to retreat, Fang Qingshan had a cold smile on his face. Roar! Roar! A dragon's roar and an elephant's trumpet. The interweaving sounds rang out in the surroundings without warning. Kill! Fang Qingshan let out a roar, and his aura rushed towards Eunuch Lee like a wave. He punched out without the support of internal force, only the pure strength of the dragon elephant. However, it was precisely this pure strength that caused the rumbling sounds. The aura was so powerful that it was simply shocking. Not to mention, Fang Qingshan's punch was more powerful than the one that blocked the sunflower needle. However, this punch was one that he had completely grasped and painstakingly cultivated. He could unleash 200% of its power. Damn it! When Eunuch Lee saw this scene, his expression couldn't help but change. It wasn't that he couldn't take this punch, but that there were wolves in front and tigers behind. If he continued to fight with Fang Qingshan, he would really be in a quagmire. The more he struggled, the closer he would be to death. However, he couldn't avoid this punch and could only take it head-on. This was because all his paths of retreat had been sealed. If he retreated, he would only be passively attacked. Taking the initiative to attack was the best defense. Chi! A dot of starlight shone and gradually grew bigger. The sun rose from the east and shone brightly. With the point of the needle, a sunflower bloomed towards the sun. Boom! An explosion like aura rang out between the two. Although Fang Qingshan had lost an arm, his battle prowess didn't decrease at all. On the other hand, Eunuch Lee's chest had been pierced by the six-pulse divine sword, so his strength was greatly reduced. The two were pushed back by the recoil at the same time. Fang Qingshan left 3 deep footprints in front of him, while Eunuch Lee directly plowed out 2 tracks. Kill! Just when Eunuch Lee's chi and blood were surging and his wounds had opened up, Murong Bo and the other 2 seized the opportunity and almost made their move. Murong Bo's palm struck out. At first it looked ordinary, but halfway through it suddenly shook slightly. Immediately 1 palm became 2, 2 became 4, 4 became 8. When it arrived in front of Eunuch Lee, the 8 palms turned into 16 palms, and then into 32 palms. Thousand Buddha palm, reality and illusion coexisted, changing unpredictably. Chapter 73. He formed a seal with both hands and smiled. In an instant, a Buddhist aura appeared. Xiao Yuanshan pointed from afar, and a stream of energy shot out like a blossoming flower. Flower pinching finger, Buddha pinching flower, smile of Kasyapa. Clang! A rapid and crisp sound rang out. A cold sword light that was like moonlight streaked across the sky, as if it was surrounded by the might of a dragon. The sword move was dignified and had the charm of a desperate battlefield. It was extremely exquisite. Dragon City sword technique. Aside from shifting stars, joined finger, and Dragon City sword technique were the Murong family's inherited ultimate techniques. Murong Fu was quite smart. Although he relied on his family's revolving star passage technique to gain the reputation of giving someone a taste of their own medicine, he was still able to deal with people with lower cultivation or the same level as him. However, this was fine when dealing with people of lower cultivation or the same level as him, but when it came to dealing with people who were more powerful than him, it was a little difficult. Compared to Murong Bo and Xiao Yuanshan, Murong Fu was clearly much weaker. Therefore, this time he used his sword technique and borrowed the power of his weapon to increase his attack power. Bang! At the same time, Fang Qingshan, who had stabilized his retreat, stomped on the ground and charged over like a cannonball. Halfway through, he twisted his waist and punched out again. A scorching aura exploded in his body like a reactor, releasing a huge amount of energy. Good. Seeing this scene, Eunuch Li's eyes became hazy and a fierce light burst out. In the eunuch industry, apart from a few people, most of them were mentally twisted. Eunuch Li saw that he was surrounded by enemies from all sides and was ambushed from all sides, which immediately stimulated the ruthlessness in his heart. If you want to make me stay, then let's see who will stay with me in the end. Eunuch Li hated Fang Qingshan's group of 4 to the bone. If it wasn't for Fang Qingshan, everyone here would be like chickens and dogs. He could come and go as he pleased, and there would be no need for him to be in such a dangerous situation. As for Xiao Yuanshan and Murong Bo, they were even more repulsive. If not for them, he would have left long ago. Even if Fang Qingshan wanted to make him stay, he wouldn't be able to. After all, at that time, he was still busy dealing with Sunflower Needle. As for Murong Fu and Murong Bo, both of them were repulsive. At the last moment, they sacrificed a few eunuchs to gain an opportunity to fail on the verge of success. Eat his flesh and sleep on his skin, seeing that he had no hope of escaping at the last moment. Eunuch Li wanted to drag someone down with him. It was not enough to drag one person down with him, but it was better to drag 2 people down with him. Chi! Eunuch Li ignored the palm, fist, finger, and sword attacks from Fang Qingshan's group of 4. He did not attack or defend. Instead, he used needles to pierce the acupoints all over his body. Seeing such an illogical scene, Fang Qingshan and the others could not help but feel puzzled. However, because the 4 of them had different cultivations, they felt very different things. Murong Fu just felt a little strange. Murong Bo and Xiao Yuanshan, on the other hand, felt that something was wrong. It was as if something bad was about to happen. As for Fang Qingshan, his heart palpitated. He instinctively felt a sense of danger. A sense of danger that could threaten his life if he was not careful. I have to risk my life. Fang Qingshan's heart shook. He immediately knew that Eunuch Li was ready to fight to the death. He wanted to stop immediately, but the sword was unsheathed. How could it be so easy to stop it? Namo Amitba. Just as Eunuch Li was about to use something similar to the Sky Demon Disintegration technique to fight for his life, an ethereal sound of Buddhist chanting suddenly came from the field. Following that, a very ordinary-looking but dignified old monk descended from the sky. He patted Eunuch Li's shoulder and forcefully interrupted his desperate secret technique. Following that, a formless aura burst out. A 3-foot wall of aura pushed out, protecting him and Eunuch Li. Bang! Bang! Xiao Yuanshan's flower pinching finger, Murong Bo's 1,000 Buddha's palm, Murong Fu's Dragon City sword technique, and Fang Qingshan's Dragon Elephant Fist technique all hit the wall of aura. Unfortunately, what was the result? It was like a stone falling into a pond. It only caused a few ripples on the wall of aura. The sudden change caused the scene to become quiet all of a sudden. Today's matter was really full of twists and turns. Eunuch Li's appearance drew out Fong Qingshan, the enviable expert. Following that, Duan Yu, Murong Bo, Xiao Yuanshan, and a few other experts also appeared. Pull one hair, and the whole body will be affected. In order to not be able to eat and sleep in peace in the future, everyone prepared to make Eunuch Li stay. As for Shaolin, in order not to be killed as a warning to others, they prepared to stop it. As Fong Qingshan made his move again, it seemed that the situation was already very clear. However, no one expected that a mysterious expert would appear at the last moment. Moreover, as soon as he appeared, he suppressed everyone present. Whether it was Eunuch Li, Fong Qingshan, Murong Bo, Xiao Yuanshan, or the others, they were all suppressed by him. The unknown is the most terrifying thing. Fong Qingshan was fine because he knew who the person was. However, the others did not know. Everyone present was shocked. There was actually such a strong expert in Shaolin Temple, especially Xiao Yuanshan and Murong Bo. They had been hiding in Shaolin for decades, but they never knew that there was such an expert in Shaolin that made people unable to resist. Cold sweats suddenly broke out on their backs. Two benefactors, you have been hiding in Shaolin for decades. You can practice the 72 consummate skills. Why do you want to harm Shaolin today? Sure enough, what he feared had come. The old monk looked around and locked his eyes on Xiao Yuanshan and Murong Bo, you know. When the two heard the old monk's words, they asked in unison. I still remember that the first time this benefactor came to the pavilion to read, it was a formless finger technique. The second time he came, it was a Prajna palm technique. I had put a Dharma flower sutra and a Shiva sutra next to it, but unfortunately, the benefactor turned a blind eye to it. The old monk did not answer the two's questions. Instead, he slowly talked about the little things that happened in Shaolin. And the other benefactor was the same. He picked a flower pinching finger technique and treated it like a treasure. But he threw away my ancestors' profound word technique and the sayings of the past eminent monks. What a pity, what a pity! When Murong Bo and Xiao Yuanshan heard the old monk's words, their hearts were filled with shock. Who knew that their every move was under the surveillance of others, and they had no idea about it at all. The two benefactors have inherited Shaolin's consummate skills. It can also be considered that you have received Shaolin's grace. Today, can you not bring trouble to Shaolin's name? The old monk did not care about what Xiao Yuanshan and Murong Bo were thinking. He tried to persuade them. Xiao Yuanshan and Murong Bo looked at each other, but no one said anything. It was not because they changed their minds because of the old monk's words, but because from the old monk's every move, they knew that it was useless whether they agreed or not. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.